I'm Jody, 29 years old, now working from home. Hugh and I have been married for 3 years. Before transitioning to remote work, I held a consulting role at a major corporation, overseeing online operations. The decision to freelance came unexpectedly after I became pregnant, prompting me to leave my corporate job. Thanks to my background in marketing, I've been able to secure consulting projects and manage online operations, which has been financially rewarding. Hugh doesn't fully grasp the nature of my work. He doesn't realize that I earn an income, viewing my job more as a hobby. Working from home has afforded me flexibility, allowing for a peaceful pregnancy and a safe delivery of our daughter, Caddy. During the initial month post-delivery, I stayed with my parents, relying on their support. However, Hugh kept urging my return, prompting me to shorten my planned 3-month stay to just 1 before returning to our apartment. Since then, I've managed to balance work and childcare without financial issues. However, one day my mother-in-law Olivia proposed that we live together. We've always had a decent relationship with my in-laws, maintaining a respectful distance, so the idea of living together didn't seem entirely unwelcome. Still cautious about potential tensions between mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law, I agreed under the condition that we build a duplex. My in-laws were delighted with the prospect of living together under any circumstances, so I swiftly found a construction company that accommodated our requirements and oversaw the purchase and construction of the property. Approximately 6 months after we first discussed living together, our new home was finished. It's a duplex with shared spaces, including a common entrance. The second floor features a small kitchen and living area. It's cozy, and the construction stayed within our budget, alleviating any financial concerns I had. When the house was finally completed, my in-laws were overjoyed, and their happiness was reassuring. Olivia enthusiastically volunteered to take care of Caddy, our daughter, which initially seemed like a great help for my work. However, those hopes were quickly dashed. Once we began living together, Olivia started imposing household chores on me even during my work hours. She'd barge into my office without regard, demanding, "I'm hungry, make me something right now," or "hurry up and do the laundry, there's dust everywhere." She'd even guilt-trip me with, "If you don't clean, my allergies will act up," and complain about Caddy's cries, insisting, "She's noisy, do something about it." These constant interruptions made it nearly impossible to concentrate on work. Consequently, I often found myself working late into the night, struggling to balance work commitments with caring for Caddy, which took a toll on my mental and physical health. When I confided in Hugh about Olivia's behavior, he didn't support me. "You're the wife, you should naturally obey," he would say dismissively. His criticisms escalated with each complaint I raised. Even when I asserted, "I'm not just playing on my computer, I'm working seriously," he refused to believe me. Cody, my father-in-law, appeared to echo Olivia and Hugh's beliefs. "Working from home isn't serious, it's more like a hobby," he would often remark, showing little faith in my work. This constant skepticism began to erode my confidence, leaving me afraid that I was worthless and might eventually be abandoned due to my perceived inadequacies. Then, one day, when Hugh was off from work and everyone was at home, I was working with Caddy beside me when Hugh abruptly burst into the room with a loud noise. "Come to my parents' room right now," he demanded, completely disregarding Caddy, who started crying in response to the disturbance. It seemed deliberate. He must have known Caddy was there. Frustrated by Hugh's and my in-laws' lack of consideration for my work, I comforted Caddy and reluctantly headed downstairs. Entering the living room, I found my parents-in-law and Hugh engaged in animated conversation. Irritation began to simmer within me, reaching its limit. "What's going on?" I asked calmly, settling down with Caddy in my arms. The three of them continued whispering, their secretive demeanor making me uneasy as I waited for them to include me in the discussion. Then Olivia cleared her throat dramatically and fixed me with a stern look. "You need to leave this house," she declared abruptly. I was taken aback by Olivia's sudden statement. What did she mean by leave? Was she suggesting I go back to my parents' house temporarily? "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to steady my voice as I stared back at her, searching for an explanation. "It means exactly what I said," she sneered, folding her arms defiantly. I glanced over at Hugh, hoping for some clarity, but he just kept smiling placidly. Is he out of his mind, or am I losing mine? I wondered silently. Determined to understand, I took a deep breath and calmly asked Olivia to explain her statement. Her eyes gleamed with a vindictive satisfaction, and she launched into a diatribe with a smile that mirrored Hugh's. Every day, you neglect the housework, let Caddy cry endlessly, and just waste your time playing with your computer and phone. I don't know if you're solely relying on Hugh's salary, but you never heed advice, acting like a parasite, Olivia continued, her laughter ringing out as if she found the situation amusing. I'm sorry if the housework isn't up to your standards, but I do the essentials. And Caddy is well taken care of, she's a calm child. I countered Olivia's accusations, trying to defend myself. I can't just abandon my computer and phone. I'm working, isn't that understandable? Hugh suddenly fixed me with a harsh glare. Are you cheating or something? He accused sharply. I stared back at Hugh, utterly bewildered by his unfounded accusation. Yes, Jody is cheating. Olivia chimed in, casting a disgusted glance in my direction. Shocked by their accusation, I protested vehemently. I'm not cheating. I can show you my phone right now. I reached for my mobile, eager to prove my innocence, but Hugh dismissed it with a scoff. Anyone can manipulate that. You can't be trusted. Really? Realizing arguing was futile, I reluctantly put away my phone. We don't need someone like you here. Parasites should leave immediately. Olivia continued her tirade. Get out quickly, she demanded. I began to consider leaving with my daughter as the only viable option. However, one critical reason held me back: the duplex house. I have financed it, attended countless meetings with the construction company, and meticulously overseen its design. I couldn't simply agree to leave so easily. Besides, the mortgage was still under my name, and I doubted whose salary alone could cover our living expenses. If I leave, my income goes too. Can you manage that? I challenged them, hoping to provoke some reconsideration. Hugh scoffed dismissively. What income? Don't be ridiculous. We've been living off my salary all this time. His cluelessness almost evoked pity from me. I sighed deeply and turned to Olivia. Dealing with Hugh is like handling a 6-month-old baby. Are you up for the task? He's demanding, needs his towels, underwear, and pajamas laid out after his bath, shoes polished daily, shirts impeccably ironed, suits deodorized and crease-free. If his morning coffee isn't perfect, he goes off like a volcano. I doubted Olivia could manage Hugh's high maintenance. I'm offering you a chance, I said, giving her an opportunity. I can do a better job than you, just playing around, she scoffed, dismissing my offer. Besides, if you leave, Hugh already has someone else in mind. Olivia added smugly, revealing something I shouldn't have heard. Who? What does that mean? I didn't miss a beat, turning my gaze squarely on Hugh and Olivia. Olivia looked regretful and quickly glanced away. Hugh shot Olivia a stern look and whispered sharply, Why did you say that? Explain yourself. The reactions hinted that Hugh might indeed have another woman. I fixed a piercing gaze on Hugh, silently demanding an explanation. Uncomfortably, he began to speak. Apparently, for a few months now, I've been seeing a woman named Carol, Hugh admitted in a low voice. She's in her early 20s, and she was smitten with me from the start, during a business encounter. After she made her feelings clear, we started dating. Carol is beautiful, poised, and has a great personality, he added with a laugh. I found it hard to believe, considering Hugh's appearance. I couldn't imagine such a young woman being interested in him. Half skeptical, I asked Hugh for proof, thinking, if this is true, I need to secure some kind of compensation. Hugh showed me his WhatsApp conversation with Carol. As I expected, most of the messages were from Hugh, suggesting dates and paying compliments. However, Carol appeared uninterested in anything beyond professional matters, responding with polite but brief messages. There were no emojis or informal language, just straightforward replies. Taken aback by Hugh's smug expression, I struggled to find words. Quietly, I captured screenshots of the conversation, transferring them to my phone and saving them, just in case they might serve as evidence later. Then I'll leave, I stated firmly. After everything that had unfolded, any warmth I had felt toward Hughie had evaporated, and I no longer cared about their reactions. I'm taking Caddy with me, I declared, observing Hugh and my parents-in-law seemingly pleased by my decision to depart. Hugh's demeanor shifted abruptly, his hands dropping to his sides. What are you talking about? You can't raise Caddy without any income, he objected sternly. Leave Caddy here. Don't be irrational, my parents-in-law chimed in, failing to grasp why I insisted on taking her with me. As far as I'm concerned, I see no reason to leave my daughter in this situation, I argued firmly. I have my own income, and I can't leave her with people who can't adequately care for her. When Caddy grows up, she'll work hard, and I'll support her, I continued, trying to reason with them. Hugh interrupted with nonsensical remarks as I spoke, further frustrating me. Why would I leave Caddy? What kind of father does he think he is? My anger surged, fueled by Hugh's self-centered remarks, oblivious to the repercussions. He's even treating our daughter like a pawn. Fine then, let's settle custody in court. Get a lawyer ready. In the meantime, I'll take care of her. I knew arguing here would only escalate tensions with Hugh and my parents-in-law. Confident in my decision, I resolved to proceed with legal action without hesitation. Once they acquiesced, I wasted no time in making preparations to leave. Over the next few days, I remained steadfast by my daughter's side, making necessary preparations. I reached out to the construction company that had built our house, laying out my situation in detail. I inquired about reputable real estate agents to sell the property. Nick, the company president, swiftly allied with me, ensuring they would manage everything. True to his word, they arranged a quick and lucrative sale, surprising me with the house fetching a higher price than anticipated, thanks to its recent construction, impeccable condition, and prime location. Simultaneously, they secured a suitable apartment for my daughter and me, mindful of my budget constraints but offering a great place at an affordable rate. I expressed my heartfelt gratitude and wasted no time in preparing for our move. Oh, have you already found a place? Olivia asked with a hint of amusement as I packed dishes in the living room. Yes, I replied curtly, seeing no reason to elaborate. We'll be quiet without you around, she remarked casually. Well, the one thing I'm grateful for is that you gave birth to Caddy, Olivia chuckled before walking away. Despite her unpleasant demeanor, I'd assessed the apartment. The sofa and dining table, which I had purchased, seemed too large for the new space, prompting me to decide to sell them. The refrigerator, though slightly oversized, I chose to take with me, marking it with a sticker. I labeled all the furniture and appliances I wanted to keep and snapped photos of the items I planned to part with using my mobile phone. On the day of the move, I deliberately chose a time when Hugh and my parents-in-law were out. Hugh was at work and the parents-in-law had been called away to a community event. Armed with the divorce papers Hugh had given me, I coordinated with the movers to relocate my belongings. I also arranged for the construction company to handle waste removal for the furniture and items I didn't plan to take with me. The move progressed smoothly, and within 2 hours, everything was done. A few hours later, I left the house with Caddy and began settling into our new apartment. While organizing things, the phone rang. It was Olivia. It was already 5 o'clock in the evening, and I had left before noon, so it seemed she had just realized what had happened. I answered the call cautiously. Jody, why is the house empty? Olivia's voice came through flustered and loud over the phone. Those things were mine. I got rid of what I didn't need. What's going on? Well, I bought them myself. I have receipts and other proofs of purchase, so there's no need for complaints, I stated with a laugh. Olivia seemed speechless, responding with nonsensical protests. Oh, and I've sold the house, so please vacate within a month, I added cheerfully. Olivia sounded even more surprised. Why would you do that? The house is in my name since I oversaw its construction and have been paying the mortgage. Olivia tried to argue, but I ended the call before she could say more. Afterward, I received numerous calls from my parents-in-law and Hugh, but I chose to ignore them all. My priority was swiftly settling the apartment for Caddy's comfort, leaving no room for distractions. I also sought legal advice, and all future communications were directed through my lawyer. Months passed, marked by persistent negotiations, and I successfully secured custody of Caddy. The reasons were straightforward. I had substantial financial stability, had been Caddy's primary caregiver, and my work-from-home setup allowed me to provide ample time and care. Hugh, who had presumed he would automatically gain custody, was stunned and bitterly exclaimed, "I never needed that girl anyway," storming off in frustration. Relieved to finally enjoy a peaceful life with my daughter, a sense of tranquility washed over me. However, my parents-in-law and Hughie had yet to vacate the house. Uncertain of my next steps, I received a call from the president of the construction company. With resolve, I simply stated, "Please evict them." Understanding the situation, the president chuckled heartily and assured me, "Consider it done," before ending the call. I'm not sure how the president managed to persuade Hugh and my parents-in-law to leave, but it must have been quite a feat. A few days later, I received word that they had moved out, and I was impressed by the efficiency. Even that brought a sense of relief to my heart. However, several months after the divorce, Hugh reached out to me. Why? By then, the divorce was finalized and my parents-in-law had mostly backed off, so I hadn't blocked his number. Yet, I immediately regretted not changing my phone number or maintaining the block. It's been a while. I was just thinking maybe you were starting to miss me, Hugh said. What is he even talking about? I felt more liberated than ever after the divorce, not having to worry about him. Still, I listened to Hugh's words. Apparently, Hugh had been dumped by Carol and thought I was his only option left. The way he got dumped was quite something. Right after our divorce, he went to Carol and said, "We could be together now." She responded very coldly, mistaking her professional demeanor at work for something more personal. Hugh even showed up at her home, resulting in a restraining order from the police, I recounted. He claimed, "I dumped her, but frankly, I had no interest in his story." I hung up while he was still talking and promptly blocked him. I blocked all messages and later changed my phone number, starting fresh. From mutual friends, I heard that after the incident with Carol, Hugh had trouble at work and clashed with clients. Eventually, he resigned. Struggling financially, he constantly asked various people for loans. Perhaps my parents-in-law are looking after him, but with his modest income, it's unlikely he's leading a stable life. As for me, I'm living a fulfilling life with Caddy, focusing entirely on our present, which brings me immense happiness.
I am Monica, 26 years old, and I work as a web designer, growing up in a small rural town with my grandparents, parents, and younger sister Linda. Life was far from fair. My sister, 7 years my junior, was the apple of everyone's eye. Her opinions were always prioritized, leaving me feeling neglected and unimportant. The favoritism was blatant. On Linda's birthdays, she received lavish gifts, while mine, close to Christmas, were combined into a single occasion, marked with practical gifts like books I had no interest in. When Linda started playing soccer, our parents were her biggest supporters, never missing a game or practice. In contrast, when I played my final tennis match in middle school, they were too busy driving Linda somewhere to attend. This pattern of disparity defined my childhood, fostering a growing sense of inadequacy and loneliness. Still, Linda wasn't blind to the injustice. She often stood up for me when our parents compared us harshly. "Monica is good at studying and teaching. She can do anything," she'd say. After my last tennis match, she even handed me a bouquet of flowers she had picked herself, whispering, "Good job." Our grandparents, too, tried to intervene on my behalf, reprimanding my parents for their behavior. But when my grandmother passed away, and soon after my grandfather, any buffer against my parents' criticism dissolved. Linda continued to support me for a while, but as my mother began targeting her with the same harshness, she eventually stopped. "If you're always going to side with your sister, you might as well stand outside too," my mother would sneer. To protect Linda, I told her to stop defending me. From then on, Linda focused on excelling in sports and academics, becoming the daughter my parents could proudly praise. Meanwhile, our parents' finances took a hit after the funerals, and they informed me there was no money for college. My dream of studying design at university was crushed. Instead, I graduated high school and took a job at a small design company far from home. There, I worked tirelessly, starting as an office assistant but seizing every opportunity to learn from the designers. My passion for web design kept me going, and I spent weekends studying online courses to build my skills. 3 years later, I was promoted to the design team, and 5 years after that, I became a full-fledged web designer, trusted with leading projects. During this time, I rarely returned home. Visiting only brought back the sting of my parents' disapproval, so I focused entirely on my career. 8 years after high school, I received unexpected news. Linda was preparing for university entrance exams, aiming for a prestigious medical school in the city. Despite everything, I felt proud of her. When she was accepted into her first-choice school, I congratulated her warmly. "Linda, congratulations, you've worked so hard, and I admire your dedication." She thanked me, her voice tinged with embarrassment, but soon revealed a concern. "The school suggested a donation. It's not mandatory, but Mom and Dad are worried about how it would look if we don't contribute. With tuition and living expenses already being so high, they don't know what to do." Linda planned to cover her living expenses with part-time work, but I could see the strain medical school would impose. My parents, unable to afford the donation, had pushed Linda to ask me instead of approaching me themselves. Their audacity left me stunned. Even though I resented their actions, I couldn't ignore Linda's predicament. I decided to support my sister. covering the donation and entrance fees so she could begin her new life at university. Linda moved into an apartment near the campus, and since it wasn't far from where I lived, I thought she could rely on me if she ever needed help. However, as she became immersed in college life, her responses to me grew increasingly curt. I'd get messages like, "I want to eat this," or, "I need this, please buy it for me," and I would arrange whatever she needed, supporting her in ways she couldn't ask of our parents. Occasionally, we'd meet for a meal, but even then, she remained distant, engrossed in her smartphone rather than engaging with me. When I tried to talk about her studies or lighten the mood, she'd brush me off, complaining that studying was hard. Her demeanor left me bewildered. At one such dinner, I tried to steer the conversation with a light-hearted comment. "Mom and Dad probably only care about you, though," I said, smiling, but Linda suddenly stared at me with an icy expression and snorted. "Of course, a medical student like me and a high school graduate designer like you are incomparable. No one cares about a job that doesn't even need qualifications like yours." Her words felt like a slap. "There's no need to say it like that," I replied, stunned. Linda rolled her eyes. "It's the truth. Being a designer is just a title. Anyone can make a website if they look it up online. You'd probably be better off getting a real qualification, but that's hard for someone who only graduated high school." I tried to defend myself. "It's not that simple. I'm studying and working hard every day. You shouldn't judge without understanding." Linda dismissed me with a displeased glance and clicked her tongue. "Dad and Mom are right. They say you're a disappointment. Someone who couldn't even go to college. I'm only here because they told me to watch over you and make sure you don't fall any lower." I froze, her words sinking in like stones. Memories of my parents comparing us since childhood rushed back. Linda is smart, kind, and dependable, while Monica is stupid, clumsy, and can't do anything. I lowered my head, feeling like I couldn't breathe. Seeing me bow my head, Linda mistook my silence for tears and smirked. "I'm going home now," she said briskly and left. Living on her own had transformed Linda. Surrounded by exceptional people and showered with praise from our parents, she fully believed in the image they painted of her as a prodigy destined to be a top doctor. Meanwhile, their disdain for me was reflected in her tone and attitude, as though she had absorbed their judgment entirely. That winter, as usual, I returned home for the holidays. My parents had asked me to come back with Linda, who hadn't visited since starting university. When we arrived, it was clear who the focus of their attention was. The table was piled high with steak, pizza, and treats to celebrate her visit. That evening, neighbors, relatives, and even Linda's old classmates gathered for a grand party. Linda basked in the attention, boasting loudly about her life at university. "Mom keeps asking me to come home more often, but you know how tough it is at the country's most prestigious medical school. I can't just leave my team projects or relax at home. People are always contacting me about something, and it's exhausting." I busied myself in the kitchen, avoiding the spotlight, but I could hear her voice dominating the conversation. To the parents and relatives, her boasting seemed fine, but to the neighbors and classmates, it must have sounded grating. When I brought out a tray of wine, an elderly neighbor tried to shift the attention to me. "Monica, aren't you working in design?" Before I could respond, Linda and my parents cut in. "You can't really say much about her. She's trying, but she didn't even go to college. She's such a disappointment," my mother said bluntly. The room fell awkwardly silent. Many of those present hadn't gone to college themselves and were raising families or working hard, but they refrained from contradicting her. Only my parents and Linda seemed oblivious to the discomfort. Feeling humiliated, I tried to slip away, but Linda stopped me. "You still come home a lot, don't you, Monica? I guess you don't think about anything. Maybe that's why you're so bold," she said, laughing loudly. Our parents joined in, laughing as if it was all a joke. "If you say that much, Linda, it'll hurt her feelings. Poor Monica," my father added mockingly. My anger boiled over. I clenched my fists and managed to squeeze out, "It's better if I don't come back next year." "I get it." Relatives and neighbors looked at me with concern, but I ignored them, putting down the tray and grabbing my coat and bag. Linda smirked as I prepared to leave. "I understand. Don't bother coming back again," she said with a wave, and my parents echoed her sentiment with casual indifference. Heart pounding with anger and sorrow, I stepped out into the cold night, leaving behind the people who had so thoroughly dismissed me. I didn't look back. As I headed to the station, I fought to suppress the storm of emotion swirling within me. Returning home always left me with a heavy heart. When I was aspiring to be a web designer, I could use my studies as an excuse to distance myself from my parents. but as I grew older and advanced in my career, I found it harder to sever ties completely. The lingering sense of familial obligation weighed on me, even as I struggled to reconcile the disappointment and anger I felt toward them. Linda was still a university student, young and inexperienced in the realities of working life. Perhaps that's why she couldn't grasp how much effort it took to navigate society independently. I told myself that our parents had likely done their best in their own way to raise their children. Still, it was undeniable that they had spent years putting Linda on a pedestal, praising her as a genius while adopting a condescending attitude toward me. That winter, Linda's terrible behavior during our family gathering solidified my resolve. I realized that if I truly valued my own work and self-respect, I couldn't continue this toxic relationship, even with my own family. It was in that moment I decided to cut ties for good. Months passed after that decision. One day, I received an unexpected call from Linda. When I didn't answer, she persistently left messages, urging me to pick up. Reluctantly, I finally answered. "Did you pay my tuition properly?" Linda's voice carried a mixture of urgency and entitlement. I responded calmly. "I paid the donation and the entrance fee before you enrolled. What about this year's tuition?" "The university is asking for it urgently," she replied. "I don't know anything about that," I said. Even over the phone, I could sense Linda's discomfort. Indeed, I had drained my savings to cover her initial costs, the entrance fee, donation, and tuition for her first year. Those expenses had almost depleted my finances at the time, and I'd planned to pay subsequent fees as they came due. But after the incident at the end of the year, it was inconceivable that they would expect me to continue supporting Linda, especially after being told not to come home. "I paid the donation because I wanted to support you," I said firmly. "Didn't mom and dad send you to an out-of-state private university because they could afford the tuition? Or did they do it knowing they didn't have the money?" "That's not it," Linda stammered. "I have wealthy friends, so there are other expenses besides tuition and living costs. Mom and dad somehow managed those, but now they don't have the money for tuition. That's why they told me to contact you." It all made sense. My parents had likely counted on my financial support from the start, especially after I advanced in my career. I had moved to a major design firm, where my skills were recognized, and my salary had increased significantly, while I had saved diligently. My support for Linda was meant to be temporary, not a permanent obligation. From the sound of it, the savings meant for her education had been squandered on her leisure activities. Despite this, I no longer had the emotional capacity to forgive. Helping with the tuition wouldn't have been financially difficult, but I refused. A few days later, my parents called, demanding I pay Linda's tuition. Their accusatory tone only deepened my resentment. It was clear that they didn't see me as part of the family, only as a source of money. Their lack of respect and consultation made it impossible for me to comply. Linda began calling almost daily. Her messages were filled with self-centered pleas. "Please pay the tuition. If you don't, I'll be expelled. Scholarships and part-time jobs aren't enough. It would be a waste if someone as promising as me had to leave school. I'll pay you back when I start working. Just help me. As family." She even left absurd messages like, "If you're upset because they told you not to come home, I can try persuading mom and dad." I saved her messages in a separate file, then deleted everything else and blocked her number. No one deserves to be treated as a doormat just because they're family. After that, I completely cut off communication with them. A relative later told me that Linda managed to secure scholarships and loans to cover her second year's tuition. However, without financial support for living expenses, she had to work part-time. Balancing work with her studies proved too difficult, and she ended up failing several courses. Eventually, she dropped out of university altogether. With no other options, Linda returned to live with our parents, but with their finances drained, there was no money to consider transferring her to another school. She didn't seek work locally either. Instead, she became reclusive, spending her days immersed in video games and lashing out at night in fits of stress. A friend who lived nearby later told me that the sounds of family arguments could be heard regularly from their house. My parents, once so proud of Linda, seemed powerless to confront her. As time went on, things only worsened. My father, under immense stress, caused a scandal while commuting to work. He was accused of groping a woman on the train, and though the case was settled without charges, he resigned in shame. My mother, who had little work experience, struggled to find a job that could sustain the family. They occasionally tried to contact me through relatives, but their messages were always the same, demanding and unapologetic. Eventually, even the relatives lost patience. "We'll handle it here. Don't worry," they told me. cutting off any further attempts at communication. I heard through the grapevine that Linda and my father, both unemployed, were living in near destitution. My mother, frustrated and overwhelmed, had disappeared entirely, leaving them to fend for themselves, without any goodwill left in the neighborhood. Help from others was non-existent. Meanwhile, my life had taken a different path. My career as a designer flourished. I was invited to join a major project that would leave my name known in the industry. With the project wrapping up and my savings secure, I decided to pursue a long-held dream, taking university entrance exams. Now, I plan to study business management, with the goal of going independent in the future. For the first time in years, my heart is racing with excitement for the challenges ahead. My name is Abigail, and I am 25 years old. Yesterday marked a significant milestone in my life. I married my partner of 4 years in an intimate backyard ceremony, perfectly timed to coincide with our 4th anniversary. Though the wedding was small, its importance made postponement unthinkable. Every detail, from decorations to catering, had been carefully arranged, underscoring how impractical it would have been to reschedule. Yet, the day was bittersweet. My father, who was meant to walk me down the aisle, was absent. Initially, he claimed a medical emergency, but under pressure, he confessed the truth. He had chosen to attend a rare camping trip with my brother, who only visits a few weeks each year. His decision felt like a prioritization of my brother over me, and his dismissive suggestion that rescheduling would be easy only deepened my hurt. In his absence, my stepdad walked me down the aisle. It was a touching moment, but it carried a weight of emotion that shouldn't have been there. When my father arrived after the ceremony, he was visibly moved by the photos. Realizing the magnitude of what he had missed, we had a raw, emotional conversation that culminated in his tearful request for a second ceremony as a way to make amends. The situation left me conflicted. While I was deeply hurt by his initial decision, I was also pained by the regret and guilt he felt afterward. The day, which should have been filled solely with joy, became a reflection of the complicated dynamics within my family, underscoring how seemingly simple choices can have profound consequences. Growing up, my relationship with my family was always complex, particularly with my older brother. Despite my efforts to feel genuinely happy for him, his arrogance often overshadowed my admiration. Gifted in many areas, he had a way of positioning himself as the center of attention, which only amplified his brash demeanor. He didn't hesitate to tease or bully me, making our relationship tense. When he left for college, I felt an undeniable sense of relief. This dynamic was further strained when my parents divorced during my middle school years. Their marriage had been fraught with tension for as long as I could remember, and while they put on a united front in public, their unhappiness at home was palpable. Their split was triggered by my mother's affair with a college friend, which led to a bitter and contentious divorce. Despite the circumstances, my father agreed to shared custody. The aftermath of the divorce was challenging. My father began drinking more heavily, and his relationship with me grew increasingly distant, especially after I chose to maintain a friendly relationship with my mother and her new husband. My brother, on the other hand, sided completely with my father, often vocalizing his disdain for my mother and stepdad. This created a deep rift between us, as I sought to navigate a middle ground. A few months after the divorce, my mother remarried. I stood as a bridesmaid at her wedding, but my brother refused to attend. Despite his resentment, he was still required to spend half of each month with our mother, per the custody agreement, a situation he bitterly opposed. Unlike my father, my mother treated us equally, which my brother struggled to accept. For someone so accustomed to being the center of attention, the perceived loss of favoritism was difficult for him to process, leading to frequent outbursts. My father, believing my brother was being mistreated by my mother and stepfather, made several attempts to gain full custody. However, his claims lacked evidence and were ultimately unsuccessful. Over time, these battles only served to deepen the divisions within our family. Reflecting on my wedding day, I can't help but see how my father's absence, and the reasons behind it, are emblematic of the larger dynamics that have shaped our family. While I strive to move forward with grace, this event has left me grappling with the weight of old wounds, the complexity of familial love, and the ever-present challenge of finding balance in relationships marked by conflict and history. I felt a sense of relief knowing my mother truly cared for me and that my stepfather was a kind and decent man. As a child, I struggled with conflicting emotions about my mother's affair, which ended her marriage to my father. Over time, I chose to focus on my happiness and maintained a close relationship with her, a decision I would cherish even more after losing her to cancer 4 years ago. The time we spent together became precious memories, and I came to appreciate her unwavering love despite the complexities of her personal life. In her final days, my brother visited rarely, but he made an effort to be there toward the end, bringing her some comfort. After her passing, my stepfather moved out of state, though we stayed in touch. A year later, my brother relocated to London for a job, visiting our father annually, and our communication dwindled to nearly nothing. As the years passed, the dynamics in my family began to shift, particularly between my father and me. He apologized for his distant behavior after the divorce, admitting that he had felt betrayed and hurt. He also confessed to favoring my brother, which strained our relationship. We agreed to work on improving our bond, and to my surprise, it began to heal. The change was so profound that I asked him to walk me down the aisle at my wedding, and he agreed. Despite this progress, I always felt like a secondary concern to my father, especially when my brother was around. My father's efforts to connect with me only seemed to happen in my brother's absence, a pattern that became glaringly obvious with a recent incident. He asked me to postpone my wedding so he could go on a last-minute camping trip with my brother. Hurt and frustrated, I called my stepdad and asked him to walk me down the aisle instead. My stepdad, who had been a supportive presence during my mother's funeral, hesitated at first, aware of the tension this could cause with my father. Eventually, he agreed. As my wedding day approached, my father became increasingly distant, preoccupied with my brother's visit. On the big day, he was absent, a painful yet unsurprising reality. I held out hope he might arrive at the last minute, but that hope faded as I walked down the aisle with my stepdad by my side, a moment that was both joyful and bittersweet. Later, I sent my father a photo from the ceremony, showing my stepdad escorting me. Hours passed without a response, but as the evening wound down, he unexpectedly appeared, exhausted and apologetic. He admitted he regretted not prioritizing my wedding and suggested holding a second ceremony so he could walk me down the aisle. His plea left me torn between hope for a new beginning and frustration over his thoughtlessness. As we spoke, it became clear his regret wasn't entirely about missing my wedding. It was also about being outshone by my stepdad. His desire for a second ceremony seemed driven more by pride than genuine care for me. Disappointed, I told him I wouldn't rearrange my special day for his benefit. His tears and apologies followed, but they couldn't erase the years of neglect and the hurt he caused with his choices. I stood firm, recounting the many times he had let me down, and explained why I couldn't overlook this latest betrayal. Despite his emotional display, I couldn't ignore the pattern of his behavior. My stepdad's presence at my wedding had been an act of love and support, while my father's was a history of performative affection and empty promises. Eventually, I left him outside, retreating to the peace of my home. He and my brother departed shortly after. In the time since that day, I've reflected on what happened. While part of me feels regret for the harsh words and the pain they caused, I find comfort in knowing I stood up for myself. My decision to have my stepdad walk me down the aisle wasn't just a reaction to my father's absence. It was a recognition of who had genuinely been there for me. Throughout my life, I've made countless excuses for my father's actions, but I've reached my limit. His behavior is inexcusable, and I no longer feel obligated to forgive him. It's painful to confront the truth about someone you love, but everyone has their breaking point. For years, I endured his neglect silently, hiding the tears he caused. Now, I'm finally prioritizing my own well-being, even if it means leaving him behind. I've made the difficult but necessary decision to cut off contact with my father for now, a choice I feel justified in making. My husband supports me fully, though he made it clear he wanted this decision to be entirely my own. I also shared my concerns with my stepdad, worried that I had unintentionally used him as a pawn in my issues with my father. He reassured me, acknowledging the strength of our relationship, which brought me comfort. To anyone concerned about my stepdad's feelings, he has expressed no resentment, which eases my mind. In the days since my wedding, my father has reached out repeatedly, but I've chosen not to respond. I haven't read his messages, preferring to focus on the upcoming honeymoon and this new chapter of my life. When he called again this morning, I considered checking his messages, but decided against it. I didn't want his words to disrupt the peace I'm trying to build as I embark on this special journey with my husband. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me, and I reviewed the messages. They were heartfelt and apologetic, each conveying his regret for failing as a father. He admitted he had favored my brother over the years and acknowledged the validity of my grievances. He expressed a desperate desire to mend our relationship, calling me his only remaining biological child and pleading for forgiveness. While his words stirred up complex emotions, I had already decided that I needed distance to heal. I called him back to make my position clear. He answered immediately, beginning to apologize, but I interrupted. I explained that his constant calls and messages were not helping. They only reopened wounds I was trying to close. I told him I was about to leave for my honeymoon and needed space. I promised to reach out when I was ready to reconnect, but until then, I asked him to respect my boundaries and refrain from contacting me. He agreed, hiding any hurt in his voice, and the conversation ended on a quiet, yet definitive, note. By the third day of my honeymoon, I was finally starting to feel at ease, but my peace was disrupted by an unexpected call from my brother, who used a burner phone to reach me. Initially, I wanted to hang up as soon as I heard his voice, but his accusations of me being an escapist kept me on the line. He criticized my treatment of our father, demanded I apologize, and lectured me on the importance of family. He argued that our father would always be part of my life and that my stepdad could never replace him. His words felt juvenile, as though we were still children caught in the fallout of our parents' divorce. When I explained this was a matter between me and our father, he insisted it affected the entire family. He claimed I had ruined his visit and cut short their camping trip, accusing me of acting out of jealousy. I told him his accusations were baseless and immature, pointing out that despite his professional success, he seemed stuck in our childhood dynamics. Before he could respond, I ended the call, feeling both a sense of relief and frustration. After returning from my honeymoon, I decided it was time to confront the lingering issues with my father. I visited him, surprising him and my brother, who was also present. Ignoring my brother's habitual interference, I requested a private conversation with my father, and after some reluctance, he agreed. I expressed my disappointment in his recent behavior, particularly his request to reschedule my wedding for a camping trip. I reminded him of the progress we'd made in our relationship over the years and how his actions had undermined that progress. I also questioned whether his absence stemmed from genuine priorities or a sense of competition with my stepdad. The conversation was difficult but necessary. My father expressed deep regret for missing my wedding, and I reassured him that dwelling on the past wouldn't help either of us. I told him I wasn't ready to sever ties permanently. Losing my mother to cancer taught me how fleeting life can be, and despite my father's faults, I still cherish the good memories we've shared. However, I also emphasized that I needed time to heal. I explained that rebuilding our relationship would take time, possibly weeks, months, or even years, and I needed him to respect my space in the meantime. He agreed, asking if he could hug me before I left. We shared a brief, emotional embrace, and I managed to hold back tears until I was alone in my car. This isn't an ending, but rather a pause, a chance for both of us to reflect, heal, and decide how to move forward.
I straightened my tie, checking one last time that my presentation materials were perfect. Tonight's family dinner at my sister Rebecca's mansion was more than just a gathering. It was my chance to finally prove myself. After years of working in silence, making strategic investments through my company Griffin Capital, I was ready to pitch my biggest venture yet. I just needed backing from Monarch Bank, where my brother-in-law, Marcus Williams, served as executive vice president. The irony wasn't lost on me. 10 years ago, Marcus had been the one to deny my first business loan, calling my ideas childish fantasies. Now he paraded around at every family function, reminding everyone how he'd saved my sister from her struggling family by marrying her. James, Rebecca greeted me at the door, air-kissing my cheek. My little sister had changed since marrying into the Williams banking dynasty. The warm girl who used to defend me against schoolyard bullies was now more interested in social climbing than family loyalty. "You're looking professional," she said, eyeing my off-the-rack suit with barely concealed disappointment. "Marcus just got back from Milan. Wait till you see his new Italian suits." The dining room was a monument to new money trying to look old. Crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, and what I suspected were reproduction paintings pretending to be originals. Marcus sat at the head of the table like a king holding court. "James, the small business genius graces us with his presence," Marcus called out, drawing laughs from the other guests, all bank executives and their wives. "Still running that little investment firm of yours? What was it called?" "Pigeon Capital." "Griffin Capital," I corrected quietly, setting up my laptop. "And actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. I have a proposal." "Oh God, not another one of your proposals," Marcus groaned dramatically. Remember his last idea, honey? What was it? Affordable housing developments, as if anyone wants to invest in that. Rebecca giggled nervously. James, maybe this isn't the right time. The proposal is solid. I pressed on. A $2 billion development project. Sustainable housing, commercial spaces, community facilities. All we need is financing from Monarch Bank. Marcus nearly choked on his wine. $2 billion? Have you lost your mind? He started laughing, and others joined in. You can barely afford that suit, and you want to play with billions. The numbers work, I insisted, pulling up my presentation. If you just look. Enough. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. You want to know why you'll never succeed? Because you don't understand how this world works. Real business isn't about helping people or building communities. It's about power. And you, dear brother-in-law, have none. He stood up, straightening his Italian suit. Tomorrow morning, I'm presenting to Monarch Bank's board about our latest acquisition. Real business, big business, something you'll never understand. So stick to your small dreams, James. It's all you're good for. As forced laughter filled the room, my phone buzzed. A message from my lawyer. Documents confirmed. Transfer complete. You now own 51% of Monarch Bank's shares. Board meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Ready to meet your new employees? I looked up at Marcus, still laughing at his own joke, and allowed myself a small smile. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. I arrived at Monarch Bank's headquarters at 8:45 a.m., wearing the same off-the-rack suit from last night. The security guard did a double take when I walked in. He was used to turning me away from Marcus's floor. Mr. Griffin? My lawyer, Sarah Chen, waited by the elevators. Everything's in place. The board members have arrived early, eager to hear about Marcus's big announcement. She smiled. They don't know there's been a slight change in the agenda. The last decade had been a careful chess game. While Marcus and his banking elite mocked my small investments, I'd been quietly building an empire through Griffin Capital. Shell companies, silent partnerships, strategic acquisitions, all leading to this moment. The struggling companies I helped rebuild now formed a network of loyal allies, and their combined resources had allowed me to execute the ultimate takeover. Does anyone suspect? I asked as we rode to the top floor. No, the share acquisitions were completely compartmentalized. Each shell company appeared independent. Even our insider sources say Marcus is confident about today's meeting. He's planning to announce Monarch's takeover of Rivera Banking Group. I smiled. Rivera Banking Group, another company I secretly controlled. The boardroom was impressive. All mahogany and marble, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Marcus stood at the head of the table, that same smug smile from last night plastered on his face. James, what are you doing here? This is a closed board meeting. Actually, Sarah stepped forward, placing a folder on the table. Mr. Griffin has every right to be here. What is this? Marcus grabbed the papers, his face reddening as he read. Ownership documents, I said calmly, taking a seat. As of 8 a.m. this morning, Griffin Capital holds 51% of Monarch Bank's shares. The room erupted in chaos. Board members grabbed copies of the documents, whispering frantically. Marcus's face had gone from red to white. Impossible. We would have known if someone was buying up shares. Would you? I pulled up a presentation on the boardroom screen. A web of companies and acquisitions, all leading back to Griffin Capital. You were too busy looking down on small businesses to notice them uniting under one banner. My banner. This is a trick, Marcus sputtered. The Williams family has controlled this bank for generations. Until you started making risky investments and alienating smaller clients, I countered. Did you think those clients had nowhere else to go? They came to me, Marcus. All those small dreams you mocked. They added up. The board members were nodding now, seeing the full picture. Marcus had been bleeding the bank with his aggressive expansion plans, while I'd been building a sustainable network of loyal customers and solid investments. You can't do this, he whispered. Rebecca. She's your sister. Yes, she is. And maybe now she'll remember what that means. I stood up, straightening my off-the-rack suit. By the way, your Rivera Banking Group takeover announcement? That won't be necessary. They already answer to me. The boardroom doors opened and Rebecca burst in, her face streaked with tears. Marcus, what's happening? Why is our account frozen? About that, I turned to my sister. We need to discuss some irregularities in Marcus's personal trading accounts. Significant irregularities. Marcus collapsed into his chair, his Italian suit suddenly looking like the costume it always was. All those years, he breathed. You were playing us. No, Marcus. I was just doing business, real business, something you never understood. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of audits, meetings, and revelations. What started as a takeover quickly turned into a scandal as our forensic accountants uncovered years of Marcus's financial misconduct. Unauthorized trades, inflated assets, and personal expenses disguised as business costs. The prestigious Williams banking dynasty was built on a foundation of sand. I sat in my new office, formerly Marcus's, reviewing the latest audit reports when Rebecca stormed in. How could you do this to us? She demanded, slamming her hands on my desk. Do you know what people are saying? Our friends won't even take my calls. Your friends? I looked up at my sister. Or your husband's friends? What's the difference? Marcus gave me everything. A perfect life, status, respect. Respect? I stood up, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Let me show you something. I pulled up security footage from last month's board meeting. Watch how your husband treated his employees. The ones who weren't important enough. Rebecca's face fell as she watched Marcus berating a junior analyst, mocking an elderly board member, dismissing valid concerns about predatory lending practices. This was your perfect life? I asked softly, standing silently while he bullied people, just like you stood silently at that dinner when he humiliated me. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered. After he helped pay for Mom's medical bills. I paid for those bills, I interrupted. Through one of my shell companies, Marcus just took the credit. Check your records. Rebecca sank into a chair, her designer handbag sliding to the floor. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? The brother with small dreams. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Griffin? The FBI agents are here about Mr. Williams's trading violations. Rebecca's head snapped up. FBI. James, please. He's still my husband. And you're still my sister. I sat beside her. That's why I've arranged for immunity in exchange for his cooperation. He'll face penalties and fines, but no jail time. The Williams family legacy might be over, but you won't have to see your husband in handcuffs. Why? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Why show mercy after everything you did? I handed her a framed photo I kept in my desk, us as kids, her standing up to bullies who were picking on her nerdy big brother. Because a long time ago, someone taught me that real strength isn't about having power. It's about how you use it. As Rebecca broke down crying, my phone buzzed with a message from the board. Marcus had agreed to resign. His last act would be to sign over his remaining shares. The Williams banking dynasty was officially over, but maybe, just maybe, the Griffin siblings could start healing. 1 year later, the sign on the building read Griffin and Partners Financial Group, a merger of Monarch Bank with my other companies. The marble and mahogany remained, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Junior employees no longer flinched when executives walked by, and the boardroom hosted regular meetings with small business owners and community leaders. I was reviewing a microlending proposal when my assistant announced an unexpected visitor, Marcus. He looked different, humbler in his department store suit, the arrogance gone from his stance. The immunity deal had saved him from prison, but his reputation in banking was finished. Most of his so-called friends had abandoned him the moment his empire crumbled. James, he nodded, standing awkwardly by the door. I came to sign the final paperwork. The divorce settlement. Rebecca told me, I replied, gesturing for him to sit. She said you're moving to Chicago. Small consulting firm. Very small. He attempted a weak smile. Ironic, right? All those dreams I mocked. Turns out they weren't so small after all. No, they weren't. He placed a folder on my desk, the last of his Monarch Bank shares being transferred as part of the divorce settlement. You know what the worst part is? He said quietly, not losing the money or the status. It's realizing that I had a chance to be part of something meaningful. Your vision for ethical banking, community development. I could have been your ally instead of your enemy. Yes, you could have. Rebecca's happier now, he admitted. I see it when we meet with the lawyers. She's found her voice again. Started that children's charity she always talked about. The one you said was a waste of time. He winced. I deserve that. And a lot more. He stood up, straightening his modest tie. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for the dinner or the loans, but for everything. You were the better man, James. You always were. After he left, I walked through the office floors, watching my employees. Our employees, at work. The analyst Marcus had berated was now heading our community outreach program. The elderly board members' concerns about ethical banking had become our core philosophy. Rebecca's charity occupied the entire 10th floor, providing support for underprivileged children. My sister had found her purpose again, separate from designer labels and social climbing. Sometimes during lunch, we'd sit in my office and laugh about old times, slowly rebuilding the bond we'd lost. That evening, as I prepared for a board meeting, my assistant brought in a loan application. Small bakery downtown. Owner says she met you 10 years ago. I smiled, recognizing the name. It was the same woman who'd given me free coffee when I was struggling to build Griffin Capital, believing in my small dreams when everyone else scoffed. On the application, I wrote, approved, with compliments from the small dream believer. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about proving them wrong by creating something they never thought possible. Marcus had been right about one thing. Business was about power. But he never understood that the greatest power lies not in what you can take from others, but in what you can help them build.
Hello, my name is Grace Carter, and I'm 34 years old. Life has been anything but simple for me, but I've always tried to make the best of what I have. For years, I thought I had the perfect life. I was married to a man I deeply loved, Michael, and I had a stepson, Jamie, who I cared for like my own. But life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. Sometimes, the people you trust the most can hurt you the deepest. My story is about betrayal, heartbreak, and finding the strength to stand up for myself. It all started on what I thought was a regular Tuesday afternoon. I had just finished a long day at work, and I was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. I had no idea that my life was about to take a sharp turn. As soon as I walked through the door, I noticed something was off. Michael was standing in the living room, his arms crossed, his face stormy. Jamie was sitting on the couch, looking at the floor, avoiding my gaze. Grace, Michael said coldly, we need to talk. His tone made my stomach drop. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Michael's jaw tightened. Jamie told me what you've been doing behind my back. I blinked in confusion. What are you talking about? Jamie finally looked up, tears in his eyes. I saw you, Grace. You were on the phone with someone, laughing and smiling. I heard you say you couldn't wait to meet up with him. My heart sank. Jamie had misunderstood something, but I could see he was genuinely upset. Jamie, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I was talking to Lydia, my best friend, about meeting up for coffee. Michael didn't budge. Do you think I'm an idiot, Grace? Jamie wouldn't lie about something like this. No matter how much I tried to explain, Michael refused to believe me. He was convinced that I had been unfaithful, and nothing I said could change his mind. I can't have someone like you in my house, he finally said, his voice cold and final. Pack your things and leave. I looked at Jamie, hoping he would speak up, but he stayed silent. My heart broke as I realized that the little boy I loved like my own had turned against me. I packed my belongings that night, tears streaming down my face. The home I had worked so hard to make warm and loving felt like a stranger's house now. Michael didn't even look at me as I walked out the door. Jamie stood at the top of the stairs, watching, but he didn't say a word. I spent that night at Lydia's place. She listened as I poured out my heart, offering comfort and reassurance. Grace, she said, you don't deserve this. You've done so much for them, and this is how they repay you? You're better off without them. But I couldn't stop thinking about Jamie. He was just a kid, and I knew he must have been manipulated into believing something that wasn't true. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life. I had to find a new place to live, figure out how to move forward, and deal with the emotional pain of losing the family I thought I had. But I also realized something important. I wasn't powerless. I had the strength to start over, to rebuild my life on my own terms. The weeks after I left Michael's house were a whirlwind of emotions. I was hurt, angry, and confused. How could the man I had loved for years believe such a terrible lie? And why would Jamie, my sweet stepson, say something so damaging? I tried to focus on rebuilding my life. I moved into a small apartment, just enough for me to feel safe and have a fresh start. But no matter how hard I tried to move on, the questions kept haunting me. I knew I needed answers. One day, while grocery shopping, I ran into an old neighbor, Mrs. Linton. She was a kind, elderly woman who had always been friendly to me. When she saw me, her eyes lit up, but there was also a hint of concern. "Grace, dear," she said, "how are you doing?" I was so shocked to hear about what happened. Her words caught me off guard. "You know about it?" I asked cautiously. "Oh, yes," she said, leaning in closer. "Jamie was telling my grandson about how he had to tell his father the truth. He said you were planning to leave him for someone else." My heart sank. Jamie was spreading the lie? But why? "Mrs. Linton," I said, my voice trembling, "did he say anything else?" She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "He mentioned how much he hated that you were always trying to discipline him. Said he wanted things to go back to how they were before you came into their lives." Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Jamie wasn't just misled, he had a motive. I went home and thought about what Mrs. Linton had said. Memory started to flood back. Jamie's reluctance to listen to me, his occasional outbursts about wanting his dad to himself, and the way he always seemed to cling to Michael whenever I tried to enforce rules. It all made sense now. Jamie had been struggling to accept me as a parental figure, and this lie was his way of trying to push me out of their lives. But why would Michael believe him so easily? That question still gnawed at me. I decided to confide in Lydia, my best friend. Over coffee, I told her everything Mrs. Linton had said. Lydia listened intently, her brow furrowed. "Grace, this isn't just about Jamie. Michael should have trusted you enough to hear your side of the story." "I know," I said, sighing, "but he didn't even give me a chance. He just threw me out like I was nothing." Lydia's eyes narrowed. "Then it's time to find out why. If Michael was so quick to believe Jamie, there might be more to this story." With Lydia's encouragement, I started digging deeper. I reached out to mutual friends, neighbors, and even one of Michael's coworkers. The more I learned, the clearer the picture became. Apparently, Michael had been feeling pressured at work, and his relationship with Jamie had become strained because of my efforts to establish boundaries. Jamie had seen this tension and used it to his advantage, telling Michael exactly what he wanted to hear, that I was the problem. But there was something else, something I hadn't expected. One of Michael's coworkers mentioned that he had overheard Michael talking about regretting certain decisions. "What kind of decisions?" I asked, my heart pounding. The coworker shrugged. He didn't say much, but he seemed conflicted, like he knew he'd made a mistake. Just when I thought I was starting to understand the situation, I received a text message from Michael. It was short but surprising. "Grace, I need to talk to you. Please meet me at the cafe near your old office." I stared at the message, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, an angry, determined part, wanted answers. I texted back, agreeing to meet him the next day. When I arrived at the cafe, Michael was already there, looking more stressed than I'd ever seen him. He stood up when he saw me, but I stayed where I was, crossing my arms. "What do you want, Michael?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He looked down at the table, then back up at me. "Grace, I think I made a mistake." "Oh, you think?" I said, unable to hide the bitterness in my tone. "You kicked me out without even listening to my side of the story. What do you expect me to say?" Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I was under a lot of pressure. And Jamie, he seemed so convincing. But now, I'm starting to realize that maybe I was wrong." Hearing his words gave me a small sense of satisfaction, but it wasn't enough. "You didn't just make a mistake, Michael," I said firmly. "You betrayed me. You chose to believe a child's lie over your wife's honesty." Michael looked genuinely remorseful, but I wasn't ready to forgive him. Not yet. "I need time to think about this," I said, standing up. "But don't think for a second that you can just apologize and make everything okay. You need to prove to me that you're willing to change." As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a surge of strength. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was taking control of my life. The meeting with Michael lingered in my mind, but I refused to let it control my emotions. I had given him a chance to speak, but his words were far from enough to erase the damage he'd done. If he wanted me to consider his apology, he'd have to earn it, and I wasn't about to make it easy. A week after the cafe meeting, I was surprised to find Jamie standing outside my apartment door. He looked nervous, clutching his backpack and shifting from foot to foot. "Jamie?" I asked, confused. "What are you doing here?" I need to talk to you," he said, his voice trembling. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready to face him, but something about the way he looked, guilty, vulnerable, made me step aside and let him in. As soon as the door closed, Jamie burst into tears. "I'm sorry, Grace," he sobbed. I didn't mean for everything to get so bad. I just wanted Dad to spend more time with me. I led Jamie to the couch and sat down beside him, trying to process his words. Jamie, you need to explain. Why did you lie about me? Through his tears, Jamie confessed everything. He admitted that he had felt jealous of the time Michael and I spent together and resented the rules I had set for him. When he realized how much Michael trusted him, he saw an opportunity to get me out of the house. I thought if you were gone, things would go back to the way they were, he said, his voice cracking, but it didn't. Dad's been so angry and sad, and I feel awful. I didn't think it would turn out like this. Hearing Jamie's confession was heartbreaking. I wanted to be angry, but looking at him, all I saw was a child who had made a terrible mistake out of fear and insecurity. Jamie, I said gently, do you understand how much pain you caused? You didn't just hurt me, you hurt your dad, too. Families are supposed to support each other, not tear each other apart. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know. I'm so sorry, Grace. I'll do anything to fix it. Please don't hate me. I sighed, my heart heavy. I don't hate you, Jamie, but fixing this won't be easy. You need to tell your dad the truth. The next evening, Jamie asked me to come with him to Michael's house so he could confess. I agreed, though the thought of stepping back into that house made my stomach churn. When we arrived, Michael looked surprised and wary to see me. Before he could say anything, Jamie stepped forward. Dad, I need to tell you something, he said, his voice trembling. I lied about Grace. She didn't do any of the things I said she did. I made it all up because I wanted her to leave. Michael's face went pale. Jamie, what are you talking about? I was jealous, Jamie admitted, tears welling up in his eyes again. I thought if Grace was gone, things would be better, but I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Dad. Michael turned to me, his eyes filled with guilt and shame. Grace, I don't know what to say. I can't believe I let this happen. I'm so sorry for everything. I crossed my arms, keeping my expression neutral. Michael, Jamie's owning up to his mistake. But what about you? You didn't just believe his lie, you acted on it without giving me a chance to explain. Do you have any idea how much that hurt? Michael nodded, his voice breaking. I do, and I'll never forgive myself for it. I was so caught up in everything else that I didn't stop to think. I let you down, and I let Jamie down, too. While their apologies were a step in the right direction, I wasn't ready to let go of all the pain just yet. This isn't something we can fix overnight, I said firmly. It's going to take time and effort from both of you to rebuild the trust that was broken. Michael nodded eagerly. I'll do whatever it takes. Grace, I mean it. I just want a chance to make things right. Jamie looked at me, his eyes filled with hope. Me too, Grace. I promise I'll do better. I laid out my conditions clearly. If Michael and Jamie wanted to repair our relationship, they needed to commit to open communication and mutual respect. For Jamie, that meant accepting me as part of the family and following the rules we set together. For Michael, it meant proving that he valued our marriage enough to stand by me, even when things got tough. They both agreed, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope, but I knew this was just the beginning. As I left Michael's house that night, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, cautious optimism, and a lingering sadness for what had been lost. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to walk it on my own terms. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of emotions and tentative steps toward rebuilding what had been broken. I wasn't ready to jump back into my marriage, but I also didn't want to shut the door on it completely. The key to moving forward was making sure that both Michael and Jamie understood the depth of the hurt they had caused, and the work needed to mend it. Michael called me every evening, updating me on his efforts to create a better environment at home. He'd started attending a parenting workshop to learn how to communicate more effectively with Jamie, and he'd also begun therapy to address his own impulsiveness and inability to listen. Grace, I've been doing a lot of thinking, he said during one of our calls. I know I failed you, and I can't expect you to forgive me overnight, but I promise, I'm committed to doing better, for you and for Jamie. It was clear that Michael was taking my words seriously, but I needed more than promises. Actions speak louder than words, and I was determined to see real, lasting changes before I considered taking him back. Jamie's transformation was equally important. He began attending counseling sessions with a child therapist, who helped him work through his feelings of jealousy and insecurity. He also wrote me a heartfelt letter, apologizing again for his behavior and promising to make amends. In one particularly touching moment, Jamie asked if we could start over. I want to be a better stepson, Grace, he said, his voice earnest. I know I messed up, but I want us to be a family again. I smiled, touched by his sincerity. We'll get there, Jamie, but it's going to take time and effort from both of us. While Michael and Jamie worked on themselves, I focused on my own healing. I threw myself into my work, taking on new projects and even starting a side business that I'd always dreamed of pursuing. The independence I gained during those weeks was empowering, and it reminded me that my worth wasn't tied to anyone else's opinion or actions. I also reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. They reminded me of who I was before the chaos, and their support was invaluable as I navigated this difficult chapter of my life. After about 2 months, Michael asked if we could meet again, this time, as a family. He wanted Jamie to be part of the conversation, so we could all discuss how to move forward together. I agreed, though I made it clear that this wasn't an invitation to pick up where we left off. This is about setting expectations and boundaries. I told him, if we're going to make this work, it has to be on solid ground. We met at a neutral location, a cozy park with a small cafe nearby. Michael had brought a notebook filled with ideas for improving our family dynamics, and Jamie had written down some goals for himself as well. Grace, Michael began, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry for everything. I've been working hard to become a better husband and father, and I hope you can see that. Jamie chimed in, his voice steady. I've been working on myself too, Grace. I know I have a lot to prove, but I want you to know that I'm serious about being better. I listened carefully, taking in their words and the sincerity behind them. Then I shared my own perspective, emphasizing the importance of respect, trust, and open communication moving forward. By the end of the meeting, we had come to an agreement. We would take things one step at a time, focusing on rebuilding trust and strengthening our relationships. Michael and Jamie would continue their therapy sessions, and I would maintain my independence while giving our family dynamic a chance to heal. We hugged at the end of the conversation, a tentative but hopeful sign of the progress we'd made. The journey had been anything but easy, but it taught me valuable lessons about resilience, self-worth, and the power of forgiveness. While the pain of betrayal still lingered, I chose to focus on the growth that had come from it. In the weeks that followed, I noticed real changes in both Michael and Jamie. They were more communicative, more respectful, and more committed to making our family work. Though the road ahead was still uncertain, I felt a renewed sense of hope. Whether or not our family fully healed, I knew I had done everything in my power to create a better future, for myself and for those around me. Because in the end, healing isn't just about mending relationships, it's about finding strength within yourself to move forward, no matter what lies ahead. Do you want to take a trip to the neighboring town and visit SAA Park sometime? I asked. SAA Park? You mean the one where you can barbecue? That huge nature park? Yeah, that's the one. The weather is supposed to be great the day after tomorrow. What do you think? My friend Kara had already invited me, and I immediately said yes. The day after tomorrow was a makeup holiday for the preschool, so the park would likely be pretty empty. Wait a second, isn't that Mrs. Sanders? A voice suddenly called out my name. Surprised, I turned around. I thought so. You're Amy, right? The person speaking seemed to know me, but I couldn't place them. I stood there blankly, trying to recall. Oh, sorry, you probably don't remember me. I'm Dan from the sales department at the same company as your husband, Tom. We met at a company dinner once. Dan? From Tom's company? It clicked. Oh, yes, I remember now. What a coincidence running into you here. I explained that I was out with friends and the kids, taking advantage of the preschool holiday. Are you from around here? I asked. No, we came from the next town over. How's your daughter, Anna? She must be in 5th grade by now, right? Anna? I blinked. I think you might be mistaken. I have 2 daughters, Mia, who's in 2nd grade, and Lucy, who's in preschool. Both are mine biologically. Dan looked surprised. Oh, really? I thought Tom had a stepdaughter. It's amazing how you've taken someone else's child into your family like that. I froze, smiling politely, completely baffled by his words. So, he continued, is it hard raising a stepchild compared to your own? I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry, but there's been a misunderstanding. My daughters are both my biological children. Dan looked puzzled, glancing at me and then back at Lucy, who had run up. Her face lit up with excitement. Mom, come eat. The sandwiches are so good, she called, tugging at my arm. Dan crouched down to her level. Hi there, what's your name? Lucy, she said proudly. That's a lovely name. Do you like your sister Sarah? Lucy tilted her head. My sister's name is Mia, not Sarah. Who are you? Dan straightened, his face now matching my confusion. I think you've made a mistake, I said, struggling to keep my tone neutral. Dan looked flustered. I should get going. My family's waiting for me. Sorry if I caused any confusion. Wait, I called after him. I don't understand. What's this about a stepchild? And Sarah? Could you explain? He hesitated, clearly regretting his words. I must have been mistaken. I shouldn't have said anything. Before I could press him further, he left, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. Back at the picnic spot, Kara noticed my expression. What's wrong? She asked, leaning closer. It's someone from Tom's company. He told me something shocking, I murmured, my voice unsteady. Kara frowned. Why don't you head home early? I can watch the kids and drop Lucy off later. You look like you need some time. Are you sure? Of course. Take care of yourself, she said with a reassuring smile. Grateful, I packed up quickly and headed home. Even during the drive, Dan's words echoed in my mind. Could Tom really have been married before? Did he have a child named Sarah? The thought was unsettling. I managed all of Tom's finances, and I knew where every cent went. There was no way he could be secretly paying child support without my knowledge. Back home, I tried to distract myself, but my eyes kept drifting to the family photo on the shelf, taken during a trip last year. It showed all of us smiling happily, Tom, the kids, and me. Could he really be hiding something so significant? Kara dropped Lucy off later that evening. You okay now? She asked gently. Better, thanks to you, I replied, giving her a tired smile. Whatever's going on, don't let it affect the kids too much, Kara advised. You've got this. Her words gave me strength. That evening, I went through the usual routine, bathing the kids, helping Mia with her homework, and preparing dinner. When Tom arrived home, he greeted us with his usual laid-back demeanor. Hey, I'm starving, he said, collapsing onto the couch with a grin. He had no idea what I'd learned. I watched him closely, searching for any sign of deception, but his relaxed, easygoing nature gave nothing away. Could he really be keeping such a huge secret? I had never sensed malice or deception from Tom. He wasn't the type to hide things, and if I confronted him, he'd probably get flustered and spill everything. But I didn't have enough information yet. If I brought it up now, he could easily deny it, and I didn't want to raise his suspicions. For now, I decided to stay quiet. Should I mention running into Dan? What if Dan told Tom we'd spoken? Would it seem strange if I didn't bring it up? That evening, as we sat down for dinner, I tested the waters. The kids and I went to SAA Park with Kara today. Oh, sounds like fun. Did Lucy play a lot? Lucy chimed in eagerly. Yeah, I had so much fun, but Mommy went home early. Tom frowned slightly. Why did you leave early? I wasn't feeling well and didn't want to use the public restrooms, I said, keeping my tone casual. Kara watched Lucy for me. Are you feeling better now? Yeah, I'm fine, I said with a reassuring smile. Then, carefully, I added, oh, and I ran into someone from your company at the park, Dan from sales. Dan? Tom asked, his tone suddenly alert. What did you talk about? He said we met at a company dinner, but honestly, I didn't really remember. Lucy was tugging at me, so we just said hello and parted ways. Tom's shoulders relaxed. Oh, okay. It could have been my imagination, but he seemed relieved. After dinner, Tom played with the kids and then settled into his usual evening routine, beer in hand, watching TV. Everything seemed normal, yet I couldn't stop looking at him differently. Tears welled up unexpectedly. I rushed to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and cried silently. Even if I'd known about Sarah before we got married, I probably would have still married Tom. What hurt was that he had hidden it from me for 9 years. Why didn't he tell me? Did he think he was protecting our family? But the bigger question was Sarah's whereabouts. If Tom had given custody to his ex-wife, that would have been a relief. But Dan's comments made it seem like Tom had been raising Sarah. Could that really be true? Sarah would be around Mia's age. Where was she now? I went to bed with a heavy heart, my mind spinning with questions. The next morning, as I was doing housework, the landline phone rang. It was unusual for it to ring, and the caller ID showed it was from Tom's office. Maybe Tom had forgotten his cell phone. Hello? I answered. Hi, Amy, this is Dan, the voice on the other end said. Dan? Thank you for your time yesterday. After thinking it over, there's some additional information I'd like to share with you. Could you give me your personal cell number? His tone was professional, probably to avoid being overheard. I hesitated, unsure of whether to trust him, but he didn't seem like a bad person. Finally, I gave him my number. Thank you. May I call you in about 10 minutes? Sure. 10 minutes later, my cell phone rang. Amy, I'm really sorry about yesterday, Dan began, his tone more urgent now. Tom just went into a meeting, so I can talk freely for a moment. I need to be quick, though. Why are you calling me? I asked, wary. This morning, Tom asked me what we talked about yesterday. How much did you tell him? I just said we exchanged a quick hello and that was it, I replied. Good, that's what I told him too, but he's still suspicious of me even saying hello to you. We need to be careful from now on. Dan's words were alarming, but I also saw an opportunity. Do you have time tomorrow morning? Could we meet at the same park we were at yesterday? There was a pause. Yes, but my wife will meet you instead. She knows more than I do. I was taken aback. Dan's wife? Why is she getting involved? She wants to explain everything. Please, just hear her out. The next day, I arrived at the park as planned. A woman was waiting for me, her posture tense but polite. Thank you for meeting me, she said as we exchanged greetings. We walked to a nearby cafe to talk in private. I'm really sorry for the trouble my husband caused you, she began. No, it's fine, I said, though I could barely contain my curiosity, but I need to know everything, please. She hesitated, then looked me directly in the eye. My name is Sarah, I'm Tom's ex-wife. I froze. Wait, what? You're Dan's wife and Tom's ex-wife? Yes, but Tom doesn't know I'm married to Dan now. The revelation was staggering. How is that even possible? Sarah took a deep breath. Tom, Dan, and I were all colleagues at the same company. We were part of a group of 8 who started together. After the company's training period, we were assigned to the same branch. During that time, Tom and I started dating. Dan was dating someone else back then and was happy for us. What happened next? After training, Tom and I moved in together, but living together exposed cracks in our relationship. Tom was friendly and easygoing, too friendly with women. A senior female colleague took a liking to him, and although he wasn't interested, my jealousy spiraled out of control. Eventually, it became too much, and he broke up with me. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she spoke, but then I found out I was pregnant. I felt a chill, and that baby was Anna? Yes, she said softly. We got married because of the pregnancy, but it was a mistake. Tom didn't love me anymore. Our marriage fell apart quickly, and he left, taking Anna with him. He took her? How could he do that? I asked, appalled. He didn't think I was fit to raise her, and maybe he was right. I was mentally shattered at the time. After he left, I quit my job and disappeared from his life. Sarah's voice broke as she continued. A few years later, I ran into Dan. He told me Tom had remarried. He even showed me pictures of Anna. She looked happy, so I decided not to re-enter her life. I just wanted to wish her happiness from afar. But Dan seemed to think Anna was living with Tom. I said, my voice trembling. We thought she was, Sarah admitted. That's why Dan said what he did. But if she's not with Tom, then where is she? I whispered. I don't know, Sarah said, her voice heavy with grief. I don't know what to do anymore. My heart ached for her. How old is Anna now? I asked. She's 11, Sarah replied, the same age as your daughter, Mia. I couldn't let go of the question that had been gnawing at me. Was it really a coincidence that you and I met at the park? Dan hesitated. Yes, it truly was. I wanted to believe him, but my trust was fractured. It's hard to trust anyone right now. I've been with Tom for almost 10 years. And if what you're saying about Anna is true, I need to find out where she is. But part of me still wants to believe Tom wouldn't keep something like this from me. He comes home at the same time every day, spends weekends with us, and never goes anywhere alone. Could he really be hiding something this huge? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered, sliding a small envelope across the table before standing to leave. My contact information is inside. If you learn anything about Anna, please let me know. She walked out of the cafe, and I stared at the envelope in front of me. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single photograph and a slip of paper with Sarah's number. The picture showed a younger Tom holding a newborn baby, smiling alongside Sarah. It was Anna. Back home, I was lost in thought, barely aware of my kids watching me. Mia tilted her head. Mom, you dropped your rice in your soup. Snapping out of it, I smiled weakly and apologized, cleaning up the mess, but my mind couldn't quiet down. I needed a plan. If I didn't pull myself together, Tom might notice something was wrong. How about we visit Grandma and Grandpa this weekend? I asked, forcing a cheery tone. Mia and Lucy's faces lit up. Grandma's house? Yay! They started bouncing in their seats. Sit down before you fall, I said, trying to keep the mood light. It's just for a few days. A friend from high school wants to meet up while I'm there. Tom raised an eyebrow but shrugged. Sure, take your time. I'll just have a lazy weekend at home. The lie came easily, though it left a bitter taste in my mouth. Tom seemed completely unbothered by my sudden plan. Was his calmness just his usual demeanor, or was it something more sinister? After dropping the kids off at my parents' house that weekend, I parked at a cafe near the train station and opened the envelope again. My chest tightened as I looked at Anna's photo. The girl in the picture was a stranger to me, but she was undeniably part of Tom's past, and possibly his present. I pulled out my phone and checked Tom's GPS location. The app showed no movement. My anxiety grew with each passing minute, but suddenly, his location changed. He was on his bike, heading away from home. I rushed to my car, following the signal. After about 30 minutes, it stopped at a small, secure apartment building. I parked a block away and walked toward the building, unsure of what I would find. Standing outside, I debated my next move. I didn't want to barge in, but I couldn't leave without answers. Desperate, I called Sarah to update her. She and Dan arrived within the hour. Just as we were deciding whether to wait longer, the building's door opened. Tom walked out, arm in arm with a tall woman. They were laughing, their body language unmistakably close. I froze, covering my mouth in shock. Dan placed a steadying hand on my shoulder as Sarah's eyes filled with tears. That's Lisa, Sarah whispered. She's a former colleague of Tom's. He was seeing her while we were married. I turned to her in disbelief. So, this has been going on for over 10 years? I don't know, Sarah said. She left the company a while ago. Maybe they broke up and got back together. But where's Anna? I couldn't stay silent any longer. Tom, I called out. He flinched, spinning around to see us. His face paled when he recognized us standing together. Amy, Sarah, Dan, what's going on? Why are you all here? That's what I should be asking. I shot back. What are you doing here, Tom? He quickly unlinked his arm from Lisa's, but it was too late. Dan had already snapped several photos. Lisa smirked. Well, this is awkward. Hi, Amy. Nice to finally meet you. I'm Lisa. You must be the current wife. Her tone was mocking, and I felt anger bubbling inside me. Explain yourself, I demanded. This isn't what it looks like, Tom stammered, but his panicked expression gave him away. Where's Anna? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Is she here? Are you hiding her? Tom sat down heavily on a nearby planter, his head in his hands. He muttered something, but we couldn't hear him until Lisa interrupted. Oh, for heaven's sake, she snapped. I'll tell them. We all turned to her, stunned. Anna's fine, Lisa said, her tone dismissive. I never wanted kids, so I made sure she was taken care of. I placed her in a children's home. You what? Sarah's voice cracked. Lisa rolled her eyes. She's in a good facility, 2 states away. Tom wanted to marry you, Amy, but I told him he couldn't mention Anna. It would ruin everything. Sarah grabbed Tom by the shoulders, shaking him. You gave her up? You just abandoned her? Tom finally looked up, his face a mask of shame. I thought it was best. I didn't know what else to do. Lisa convinced me it was for the best. You didn't even try, I shouted. You lied to everyone, to Sarah, to me, to yourself. How could you do that to your own daughter? Tom broke down sobbing, but none of us felt pity. Sarah turned to Lisa, her expression fierce. You'll both face the consequences of this. Anna deserves better than what you've done to her. In the weeks that followed, I filed for divorce. Dan and Sarah reunited with Anna after confirming her identity through DNA tests. Though Anna didn't recognize Sarah at first, the bond between them began to grow. Sarah vowed to give Anna all the love she had been denied. As for Tom, he lost his job and reputation after Dan reported his actions to their company. He now works a menial job in a small town, far removed from the life he once knew. Sarah, Dan, and I have stayed in touch, forming an unlikely but supportive friendship. They sometimes watch Mia and Lucy for me, and we've built a sense of community through our shared pain and resilience. Looking back, I wonder if I could have stayed blissfully ignorant, but the truth has a way of surfacing, and when it did, everything changed. For my children, for Anna, and for myself, I chose to move forward, determined to create a life built on honesty and love.
Hi, I'm Jessica Chen, and this is the story of how my mother's cruelest words became the foundation of my success. They say the best revenge is living well. But sometimes living well means watching your tormentors realize exactly what they threw away. I can still hear her voice on that rainy November night, sharp as broken glass. You're worthless, just like your father. Get out of my house. I was 18, fresh out of high school, clutching an acceptance letter to a local community college. My crime? Choosing to study computer science instead of following my mother's dream of me becoming a doctor. Linda Chen, my mother, had always been obsessed with status. After divorcing my father when I was 12, she'd rebuilt her image as a successful real estate agent in our affluent suburban community. Our house was a showcase of her success, all gleaming hardwood and crystal chandeliers. But beneath that perfect surface lay a woman who measured everything and everyone by their potential to elevate her social status. Computer science? She'd sneered, reading my college plans. Do you want to fix printers for minimum wage your whole life? No daughter of mine will embarrass me like this. I tried explaining about artificial intelligence, software development, the growing tech industry, but Mom was already typing on her phone, barely listening. I've already told everyone you're pre-med. The wine's daughter is starting at Johns Hopkins this fall. How am I supposed to hold my head up at the country club now? That's when I made my fatal mistake. Maybe if you spent less time at the country club and more time understanding what I want. The slap caught me off guard, sending my glasses flying. In the ringing silence that followed, Mom's perfectly manicured hand shook with rage. You ungrateful little snake, she hissed. I gave up everything to give you the best life. Your loser father hasn't paid child support in years. But I made sure you had designer clothes, piano lessons, everything. And this is how you repay me. She stormed upstairs, and for a moment I thought that was the end of it, just another of her dramatic outbursts. Then she returned with a garbage bag full of my clothes, throwing it at my feet. Get out. Go live with your worthless father if you want to throw your life away. I won't watch you become a failure. Mom, please. I said "Gee, out." She grabbed my arm, nails digging in, and practically dragged me to the door. Don't come crawling back when you're living in some filthy apartment fixing computers for minimum wage. The door slammed behind me, leaving me alone in the rain. I was 18, had $342 in my savings account, and nowhere to go. My father lived 3 states away, struggling to keep his small computer repair shop afloat. I hadn't seen him in person since the divorce. That night, sitting in a 24-hour diner with my garbage bag of belongings, I made 2 calls. The first was to my father. Come stay with me, Jesse, he said immediately, his voice warm despite the static on the line. It's not much, but we'll figure something out. The second call was to decline my community college acceptance. If I was going to prove my mother wrong, I needed to think bigger. The next few years were a blur of work and study. I moved in with Dad above his repair shop, taking online courses while helping him modernize his business. His shop, Chen's Computer Repair, became my crash course in both technology and business management. Your mother always said I was dreaming too small, Dad told me one night as we worked late upgrading a client's servers. Maybe I was, but sometimes small dreams are the seeds of bigger ones. He was right. While helping local businesses with their needs, I noticed a common problem. Small companies needed enterprise-level cybersecurity, but couldn't afford the expensive solutions big corporations used. That observation became the seed of everything that followed. I spent my nights coding, developing a simplified but robust security suite specifically for small businesses. Dad let me test early versions on his clients, their feedback helping me refine the software. When I wasn't coding or helping in the shop, I was teaching myself about business planning, marketing, and startup funding. 3 years after being thrown out, I launched Secure Small, my cybersecurity startup. The timing was perfect. A wave of ransomware attacks had just targeted small businesses across the country, and our affordable solution quickly gained traction. Dad was my first investor, remortgaging his shop to give me seed money. I believe in you, Jesse, he said, signing the papers. Show them what a worthless person can do. The next few years were a rocket ride. Secure Small expanded from cybersecurity into other small business solutions. We opened offices in 3 cities. I hired the best developers I could find, many of them overlooked talents from non-traditional backgrounds. By my 28th birthday, Secure Small was valued at $80 million, and I was being featured in technology magazines as a rising star in the industry. I never Googled my mother during those years, though I knew she still lived in the same house, still sold real estate to the same wealthy clients. Sometimes I imagined her at her country club, lying about her successful doctor-daughter living abroad. I wondered if anyone ever questioned why there were no pictures, no visits, no proof of this fictional successful child. Then came the day everything changed. I was in my corner office, reviewing acquisition offers from larger tech companies, when my assistant buzzed me. "Ms. Chen, there's a Linda Chen here to see you. She claims she's your mother." I felt the old familiar tightness in my chest, but this time it was different. This time, I was different. "Send her in," I said. The woman who walked through my door looked smaller than I remembered. Her designer suit was a few seasons old, her smile strained, but her voice still carried that familiar mix of authority and disdain. "Jessica, darling, I've been trying to reach you." I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. "Finally," I said. "Really? The last words you spoke to me were that I was worthless. That was 10 years ago." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, sweetheart, you know I didn't mean that. I was just worried about your future. And look at you now, so successful. I always knew you had it in you." "Why are we here, Mom?" Her smile faltered slightly. "Well, as your mother, I thought it was time we reconnected. And actually, I'm between positions right now. The real estate market isn't what it used to be. I thought perhaps, given your company's success, you might have a place for me. Something in client relations, maybe? You know how good I am with people." I looked at the woman who had thrown me out with nothing, who had called me worthless, who had chosen her social status over her own daughter. And I smiled. "Actually, Mom, we do have an opening. Why don't you come back tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. sharp? We'll see exactly what you're worth to this company." She beamed, completely missing the edge in my voice. "Oh, wonderful. I knew you wouldn't let your mother down. The Wams will be so impressed when I tell them." "No announcements yet," I cut in smoothly. "Let's see how tomorrow goes first." After she left, I made several calls. Tomorrow would indeed show everyone exactly what people were worth, and it would be a lesson my mother would never forget. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 7 a.m. Everything had to be perfect for what I had planned. My mother arrived at 7:58, wearing her most expensive suit, her smile bright with anticipation. "Jessica, darling, I brought coffee for my successful daughter." She held up a cup from an expensive cafe, the kind she used to say I'd never be able to afford. "Follow me, Mom," I said, leading her not to my office but to the main conference room. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw it was full of people, our entire management team, several board members, and in the center, my father. "John, what are you doing here?" She nearly dropped her coffee. Dad just smiled, the same gentle smile he'd worn when he remortgaged his shop to fund my dreams. "Please, take a seat, Mom." I gestured to the only empty chair, positioned directly under the main screen. "You wanted to see what position you might be worth in this company. Let's discuss that." I moved to the front of the room, clicking to the first slide. It showed a garbage bag full of clothes on a rainy doorstep. 10 years ago, Linda Chen threw her 18-year-old daughter out of the house for choosing to study computer science instead of medicine. She called that daughter worthless. I clicked to the next slide, security footage from that night at the diner. That daughter had $342 to her name. Mom's face had gone pale. "Jessica, this is hardly appropriate for a business meeting." "Oh, but it is," I continued smoothly, "because Securus Mall's core values are built on recognizing worth in unexpected places. We hired talented developers who taught themselves coding in libraries because they couldn't afford college. We create solutions for small businesses that bigger companies deemed worthless. Everything we do is about seeing the value others miss." I clicked through more slides. Dad's shop, early versions of our software, our first tiny office. When we evaluate potential employees, we look at 3 things: their skills, their character, and their judgment of worth. So let's evaluate Linda Chen. I turned to face her directly. "Skills first. You were a successful real estate agent, specializing in luxury properties. But according to public records, you haven't closed a sale in 8 months. Your license is currently suspended pending investigation of misrepresented property values." Mom's face flushed red. "That was a simple misunderstanding." "Character next," I continued as if she hadn't spoken. "You abandoned your ex-husband when his business struggled, then prevented him from seeing his daughter. You threw that daughter out for not conforming to your image of success. And now that you're facing financial difficulties, you've come to the daughter you called worthless, expecting a job. The room was dead silent. Even the usual traffic sounds from outside seemed muted. Finally, judgment of worth. 10 years ago, you looked at a bright, ambitious 18-year-old and saw nothing of value because she didn't fit your narrow definition of success. You looked at a hardworking small business owner and saw a loser. Your judgment of worth has consistently been not just poor, but actively harmful. I clicked to the final slide, a comparison of two numbers. This is interesting, Mom. The first number is the current value of your suspended real estate license and frozen assets, approximately $42,000. The second is Secure Small's latest valuation, $80 million. Quite a gap between your judgment of worth and reality. Mom stood up, her hands shaking. I get it, Jessica. You've made your point. You're successful, and I was wrong. I'm sorry. Now can we discuss my position here like adults? I smiled. Oh, we are discussing your position. In fact, I do have a job for you. Her eyes lit up with hope. We're launching a new initiative to provide training and cybersecurity solutions to small computer repair shops. Dad's shop was our prototype location. We're expanding to 500 shops nationwide this year. I handed her a folder. Inside you'll find a job offer. Entry-level technical support. 6-month probationary period. Starting salary matches our standard entry-level package. You'll work at Dad's shop, learning the basics of the industry you once dismissed. If you complete the training successfully, you'll have the opportunity to advance based solely on your merit, not your connections, not your status, not your relation to me. She stared at the folder like it might bite her. Technical support? At John's shop? But I'm your mother. No, Mom. 10 years ago, you made it very clear I wasn't your daughter anymore because I was worthless. You can't take that back just because my worth now comes with dollar signs attached. I turned to the room, meeting adjourned, everyone. Thank you for your time. As people filed out, Mom remained frozen in her chair, clutching the folder. The choice is yours, I said quietly. You can take the job, learn the industry from the ground up, and maybe eventually understand what real worth looks like. Or you can walk away. Either way, this is the only offer you'll ever get from me. Dad waited by the door as Mom slowly stood up, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. I need time to think, she whispered. Take 24 hours, I replied, just like you gave me 10 years ago. After she left, Dad wrapped me in a hug. You okay, Jessie? I nodded against his shoulder. You know what's funny, Dad? Part of me hoped she'd take one look at that entry-level offer and storm out in outrage. It would prove she hadn't changed at all. And now? Now I almost hope she takes it, not for her sake, but because maybe, just maybe, she'll learn what we learned. That worth isn't about status or appearances. It's about what you build, what you contribute, how you treat people. The next morning, I arrived at work to find Mom waiting in reception, wearing a simple blouse instead of her designer suit. I'll take the job, she said quietly. I nodded. Report to Dad's shop tomorrow at 8 a.m. Don't be late. As I watched her leave, I thought about worth. How we measure it, how we create it, how we recognize it in others. My mother had thrown away a daughter in search of status. She'd lost everything chasing an image of success. Now she had a chance to learn what real success looked like, from the ground up. Would she learn? Only time would tell. But I had already learned the most valuable lesson. Sometimes being called worthless is just the beginning of proving your true worth. Today, Secure Small continues to grow. We've helped thousands of small businesses protect themselves in the digital age. Mom, she's still working at Dad's shop, slowly learning the industry she once dismissed. Sometimes, when I visit the shop, I catch her watching me with a mixture of pride and regret. Last week, she successfully completed her first solo computer repair. Dad sent me a photo of her proud smile, so different from her old country club smirk. Maybe she's finally learning that real worth isn't in what you appear to be, but in what you actually do. As for me, I keep that old garbage bag in my office closet. Not as a reminder of pain, but as a reminder that being called worthless doesn't make it true. Sometimes it just means others failed to see your worth. And proving them wrong, that's the sweetest success of all. Hi, I'm James Martinez, and this is the story of how my stepfamily's greed became their biggest downfall. They thought they were getting a failing restaurant, but they didn't realize what they were really buying, or rather, what they weren't. My father's restaurant, Casa Martinez, had been the heart of downtown Chicago for 30 years. It wasn't just a business. It was our family's legacy, built from the recipes my grandmother brought from Mexico and the dreams my father carried when he immigrated here with nothing but hope in his pockets. I grew up in that kitchen, learning every recipe, every secret, every tiny detail that made our food special. The smell of roasting chilies and fresh tortillas was the soundtrack of my childhood. But everything changed when my mother passed away, and 2 years later, my father married Diana. Diana came with 2 sons from her previous marriage, Marcus and Alex. From day one, they looked at Casa Martinez not as a family legacy, but as a goldmine waiting to be exploited. They saw our loyal customers, our prime location, our reputation, and they wanted it all. At first, they played nice. Diana would help at the restaurant, learning the operations while her sons took management positions. My father, still grieving and lonely, was just happy to have a full house again. I watched it all from the kitchen, where I worked as head chef, keeping my mother's recipes alive. "James, honey," Diana would say, her voice sweet as syrup, but her eyes cold as ice, "don't you think it's time to modernize? These old recipes, they're so traditional. People want fusion cuisine now." But our customers didn't want fusion. They came for my grandmother's mole sauce, for the tamales that took 2 days to prepare, for the traditions that made Casa Martinez special. Our revenue proved it. We were doing better than ever. Then my father got sick. Cancer, aggressive and unforgiving. Everything happened so fast. Between hospital visits and chemotherapy sessions, Diana and her son started making changes. They hired new staff, changed suppliers, and slowly pushed me away from operational decisions. "Just focus on cooking," James, Marcus would say, waving away my concerns about their expensive renovations. "Leave the business to those who understand it." I had a business degree from Northwestern and had practically run the restaurant for the past 5 years, but they conveniently forgot that. One night, as I was closing up, I overheard Diana and her sons in the office. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but their words froze me in place. "The lawyer says we can do it," Diana was saying. "Robert's too sick to properly manage his assets. If we can prove the restaurant is failing, we can get emergency power of attorney and force a sale before he recovers, if he recovers." "But it's not failing," Alex objected. "It's making more money than ever." "That's why we need to help it fail," Marcus replied with a laugh. "A few health code violations, some bad reviews, a couple of convenient kitchen accidents." I felt sick to my stomach. They were planning to deliberately tank my father's life's work. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They underestimated how much I'd learned over the years. What they didn't know was that 6 months earlier, when my father first got his diagnosis, he had signed over several key aspects of the business to me. Not the building or the restaurant itself. He wanted those to stay in his name until he was gone. But he gave me something far more valuable. I spent the next few weeks watching as they executed their plan. Suddenly we had health code violations. Mysterious bad reviews appeared online. Equipment started breaking down mysteriously. Our reputation was taking hits, and I could see the stress wearing on my father. Diana played her part perfectly, acting concerned and supportive, while suggesting that selling might be the best option. "The stress isn't good for your health, darling," she'd tell my father. "Let's just sell it and focus on your recovery." Finally, they made their move. At the hospital, with my father weak from chemotherapy, Diana brought in her lawyer. They had papers showing the restaurant's recent struggles, the mounting debts that they had created, and a proposal. Sell the restaurant now, to them, for a nominal fee of $1, to keep it in the family. My father, tired and confused, looked at me. "James, what do you think?" Diana jumped in before I could answer. "James understands this is for the best, don't you, James? You can still be the chef, if you prove yourself worthy of the position." I looked at my father, then at Diana's smug face, and nodded slowly. "If that's what you want, Dad." The next day, we all gathered at the restaurant for the official handover. Diana had invited their friends, making it a celebration of their rescue of a failing family business. The lawyer laid out the papers as Diana practically bounced with glee. "Just sign here, James," she said, pointing to the line at the bottom of the transfer document. "It's only worth $1 now anyway, thanks to your inadequate management." I signed my name with a steady hand, then looked up at their triumphant faces. Congratulations, I said quietly. The building and business are yours. Finally, Marcus exclaimed. Now we can make some real changes around here. I packed up my personal items from the office, including my mother's old recipe box. As I headed for the door, Diana called out, "Don't forget to be here early tomorrow. Just because you're not the owner anymore doesn't mean you can slack off." I turned back with a small smile. "Oh, I won't be coming in tomorrow, or ever again, actually." "What are you talking about?" Alex demanded. "You see," I said, "you just bought a building and a business name. But 6 months ago, my father transferred something else to me. I own all the recipes, every single one. They're fully copyrighted and trademarked under my personal holding company. I also own the Casa Martinez brand identity, logo, and most importantly," I paused, watching their faces, "I own all the supplier contracts and relationships personally." The color drained from Diana's face as I continued. "So congratulations on your new restaurant. I'm sure you'll do great serving whatever it is you plan to serve. It just won't be Casa Martinez food. Oh, and those suppliers you've been working with. They'll be delivering to my new location across town starting tomorrow." The silence that followed was deafening. Diana's perfectly manicured hands gripped the edge of the desk, her knuckles turning white. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Those recipes belong to the restaurant." Actually, I pulled out another set of documents from my briefcase. "They don't. Everything was legally transferred to Martinez Culinary Group, LLC, my company, months ago. Dad knew what he was doing. He might be sick, but he's far from stupid." Marcus lunged forward, grabbing my shirt. "You little snake. You planned this all along." "Careful," I warned calmly. "Assault charges wouldn't look good for your new business. And yes, I planned this right after I overheard you plotting to deliberately tank my father's legacy." Their lawyer, Mr. Peterson, was frantically flipping through the sale documents. This is highly unusual," he stammered. "The intellectual property should have been included in the sale." "Check page 37, I suggested. "The sale clearly specifies physical assets and business name only. You really should read the fine print more carefully." Diana's face contorted with rage. "We'll sue you." "Well, sue me for what?" I interrupted. "For legally protecting my family's heritage? For stopping you from destroying what my father built? Go ahead. Oh, and while you're at it, you might want to explain to the judge how you manipulated a cancer patient into selling his life's work for $1. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. "One more thing. I've submitted all documentation of your deliberate health code violations to the city health department. They're very interested in speaking with the new owners. I'd expect them first thing tomorrow morning." As I walked out of Casa Martinez for the last time, I heard Diana's anguished scream of rage. But I didn't look back. I had work to do. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. While Diana and her son struggled with health department investigations and tried to create new recipes for their empty restaurant, I was busy building something new. I opened Mama Martinez's kitchen just across town, taking our loyal staff, suppliers, and most importantly, our recipes with me. The grand opening was packed with familiar faces, customers who'd been coming to us for decades, who knew the taste of our authentic food couldn't be replicated. Word spread quickly. Food critics raved about how we'd preserved the traditional flavors while upgrading to a beautiful new location. Our old customers followed us, bringing new ones with them. Within months, we had lines out the door every weekend. Meanwhile, Diana's version of Casa Martinez floundered. Without our recipes, suppliers, or experienced staff, they couldn't recreate what made the restaurant special. They tried serving generic Mexican food, then attempted fusion cuisine, but nothing worked. The reviews were brutal. "It's like a soul has been ripped out of the place," one reviewer wrote. "The magic is gone." 3 months after their takeover, my father's cancer went into remission. The doctors called it a miracle, but I think it was pure stubbornness. He wasn't going to let go until he saw justice served. The first day he was strong enough, he came to Mama Martinez's kitchen. He walked through the dining room, tears in his eyes, touching the familiar decorations we'd moved from the old place. The photos of our family, the hand-painted plates my mother had collected, the string of peppers my grandmother had hung for good luck. In the kitchen he watched as I prepared his favorite dish, chile en nogada, just like his mother taught me. "You did good, Mio," he said softly. "You protected our legacy better than I ever could." Diana and her sons tried to hold out, but the numbers didn't lie. 6 months after their triumphant takeover, they were forced to sell the building at a massive loss. The final insult? The buyer was my newly formed real estate company. I kept the building but leased the space to a local art gallery. Sometimes I walk by the old location, remembering the sounds and smells that filled it for so many years. The Casa Martinez sign is gone, but the memories remain. Last week, I received a letter from Diana's lawyer offering to reconcile our differences and propose a partnership. I sent back a simple response. Some things aren't for sale at any price. Mama Martinez's kitchen has now expanded to 3 locations, each one serving the same recipes that my grandmother brought from Mexico all those years ago. My father, now fully recovered, comes in every Sunday to have lunch and tell stories to the customers about how it all began. As for Diana and her sons, last I heard, they left Chicago, their dreams of an easy takeover shattered. They learned the hard way that a restaurant isn't just a building or a business. It's the heart and soul that goes into every dish, the love passed down through generations, the traditions that can't be bought or stolen. Yesterday, a young culinary student asked me why I didn't just let them have the old restaurant and start fresh somewhere else. I showed her my mother's old recipe box, the pages worn and stained with decades of use. Because some legacies, I told her, are worth fighting for. The old Casa Martinez building still stands downtown, now filled with beautiful artwork instead of dining tables. But the real Casa Martinez, the soul of it, lives on in Mama Martinez's kitchen, where every dish we serve carries the story of a family that refused to be beaten, a legacy that couldn't be stolen, and the sweet taste of justice served piping hot. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but in our case, it was served at exactly 165 degrees Fahrenheit, just like my grandmother's perfect enchiladas. Hi, I'm Sarah Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that appearances can be the perfect disguise for success. For 3 years, I cleaned offices at Chen Technologies while secretly owning 51% of the company's shares. But let me start from the beginning. I met James Chen at a coffee shop 5 years ago. He was struggling with his startup, working endless hours trying to keep his small tech company afloat. I was immediately drawn to his passion and determination, even though his company was barely breaking even. What he didn't know was that I had just sold my first software company for $40 million and was looking for my next investment opportunity. I kept my success quiet. Too many experiences with people only interested in my money had taught me to be cautious. So when James and I started dating, I told him I worked in business operations, which wasn't exactly a lie. He assumed I was a mid-level manager somewhere, and I let him believe that. Our relationship moved quickly. Within 6 months, we were married in a simple ceremony. His family, especially his mother, Linda Chen, was less than thrilled. A manager marrying into the Chen family? She'd whisper loud enough for me to hear. James could have done so much better. But then came the twist that would set everything in motion. 2 months after our wedding, James's company, Chen Technologies, was on the verge of collapse. They needed an immediate injection of $10 million to survive. James was devastated. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I would help, but on my terms. I created a shell company, Phoenix Investments, and approached Chen Technologies as an interested investor. The deal was simple: $10 million for 51% of the company. James was hesitant to lose control, but with no other options, he agreed. What he didn't know was that his new majority shareholder was actually his wife. Here's where things got interesting. To keep an eye on my investment while maintaining my cover, I took a job as the office cleaner at Chen Technologies. James was embarrassed, his wife working as a cleaner at his company, but I insisted, saying we needed the extra money. Linda, my mother-in-law, was ecstatic. Finally, she had concrete proof of my low status. She made sure everyone knew that her son had married the cleaner. At family dinners, she'd deliberately spill things. "Oh, Sarah, be a dear and clean that up. It's what you're good at, after all." For 3 years, I played my part perfectly. I cleaned offices during the day, but my real work happened after hours. Through Phoenix Investments, I quietly guided the company's major decisions, turning down James's riskier proposals and steering the company toward more profitable ventures. The company began to stabilize, then thrive. But success made James's family even more unbearable. They credited everything to James' natural business genius while treating me with increasing disdain. Linda even started a campaign to convince James to divorce me. A cleaner isn't suitable for a CEO, she'd say. Think of your reputation. James, to his credit, defended me, but I could see the strain it was putting on him. The final straw came last week when Linda organized a surprise dinner. She invited a young, wealthy heiress who she thought would be perfect for James. The entire evening was orchestrated to humiliate me. As I served coffee, Linda had insisted I act as waitstaff. I overheard her telling the heiress, "Don't worry about her. Once James signs the new company restructuring plan tomorrow, we'll have enough leverage to force her out." Little did they know, tomorrow would change everything. Because tomorrow was the day Phoenix Investments would finally reveal its true owner, and I had my own surprise plan for the Chen family. The next morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived at Chen Technologies early, not to clean, but to prepare for what would become the most memorable board meeting in the company's history. I changed from my usual cleaner's uniform into a tailored black Armani suit I kept hidden in my office. Yes, I had an office. The cleaning staff supervisor's office, to be exact, which I'd used for late-night work when everyone else had gone home. Linda had orchestrated this emergency board meeting, convinced she finally outmaneuvered the mysterious Phoenix Investments. She'd spent months gathering support from minor shareholders, promising them better returns once they removed the absent investor who was holding the company back. She didn't realize that every move she'd made had been carefully monitored. James arrived looking troubled. He'd mentioned the meeting to me the night before, apologizing that I couldn't attend since it was high-level business stuff. I just smiled and told him I'd be busy cleaning the conference room anyway. He'd winced at that, and I'd seen the doubt in his eyes, the same doubt his mother had been carefully nurturing. The board members filed in at 9 a.m. sharp. Linda swept in last, wearing a triumphant smile, followed by her personal lawyer. She'd even invited several business reporters, planning to make the leadership transition a public spectacle. I watched through the conference room's glass walls as she took her seat beside James, patting his hand like a mother about to watch her child win a school prize. "Before we begin," Linda announced, standing up, "I want to thank everyone for coming to this historic meeting. Today we'll be voting on a new direction for Chen Technologies, one that will finally unleash its true potential." She shot a meaningful look at the reporters. That was my cue. I walked into the conference room, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor. The security guard, who usually gave me friendly nods, now stood straighter, uncertain why the cleaner was wearing an Armani suit. "What is she doing here?" Linda demanded, her voice shrill. "Security." "Actually," I said calmly, placing my briefcase on the table, "I have every right to be here." I pulled out a folder and slid it across to the company secretary. As the majority shareholder, I believe I should have a say in this new direction. The room erupted in confused murmurs. James stared at me, his face a mixture of shock and confusion. Linda laughed, but it sounded forced. "What nonsense is this? Everyone knows Phoenix Investments holds the majority shares, not some cleaner." I smiled and opened my laptop, connecting it to the room's main screen. "Let me clarify something. My name is Sarah Chen, formerly Sarah Zhang, founder of Zhang Security Systems, which I sold for $40 million 5 years ago. I am also the owner and CEO of Phoenix Investments." I pulled up the company registration documents, watching as the color drained from Linda's face. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Is it?" I turned to the business reporters she'd invited. Would anyone like to fact-check that? Zhang Security Systems' sale was quite well documented. One of the reporters was already frantically typing on his phone. His eyes widened. She's telling the truth. Sarah Zhang was named one of the top under 30 entrepreneurs 3 years ago. But she disappeared from the public eye after selling her company. "Because I fell in love," I said simply, looking at James. His face had gone pale, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. I wanted someone to love me for me, not my money or success. When I met James, I found that. And when his company needed help, I found a way to provide it while letting him maintain his dignity. Linda had sunk back into her chair, her triumphant smile long gone. But I wasn't finished. I clicked to the next slide, displaying a comprehensive analysis of every attempt she'd made to undermine the company's relationship with Phoenix Investments. "Mrs. Chen, you've spent the last year trying to convince shareholders that Phoenix Investments was hurting this company. Let's look at the actual numbers. I walked them through charts showing the company's growth since my investment. Under my guidance, Chen Technologies has tripled its market share and increased profits by 400%. I turned to the board members. The restructuring plan you were brought here to vote on would have stripped Phoenix Investments, stripped me, of my voting rights through a complex shell game of subsidiary corporations. Did anyone bother to ask why a majority shareholder who'd helped deliver such strong returns needed to be removed? The board members shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Linda's desperate glances. The reporters were typing frantically on their phones. This was definitely not the story they'd expected to cover today. Sarah, James finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Why didn't you tell me? I moved to stand beside him, placing my hand on his shoulder. Because you needed to become the leader I knew you could be without living in my shadow. Every decision you made, every success you achieved, was your own. I just helped guide the company away from the riskier ventures. All those nights you came home late from cleaning, he said, realization dawning in his eyes. I was working in my office, reviewing contracts and financial reports. I squeezed his shoulder. The cleaning job was just my cover. Though I have to say, you'd be amazed at what people will discuss in front of the cleaning staff. Linda suddenly stood up, swaying slightly. This is all a lie. Some trick. You're just a cleaner. A nobody. You can't be. Oh, but I am. I cut her off firmly. And now that everything's in the open, we need to discuss your attempts to seize control of this company. The board members might be interested to know about the offshore accounts you've been promising them. I pulled up another document on the screen. Linda's eyes rolled back, and she crumpled to the floor in a dead faint. As people rushed to help her, I caught James's eye. He was still processing everything, but I saw the beginning of a smile tugging at his lips. You really cleaned up this situation, didn't you? He whispered, and I knew we would be okay. But the day wasn't over yet. As Linda was helped into a chair, coming around, I prepared to reveal the final phase of my plan. One that would secure the company's future and put an end to the power plays once and for all. In the chaos that followed Linda's fainting spell, I maintained my composure and continued the meeting. After all, I hadn't spent 3 years building this company to let one dramatic revelation derail our future. As Linda was helped back into her chair, still pale and shaking, I moved to the next phase of my presentation. Now that we've cleared up the matter of ownership, I said, clicking to a new slide, let's discuss Chen Technologies' future. I laid out my vision, a merger with my new startup, a quantum encryption company I'd been quietly developing on the side. The combined companies would be worth over $500 million. This is what you've been trying to prevent, Mrs. Chen, I said, addressing my mother-in-law directly. While you were busy planning my removal, I was negotiating one of the biggest deals in Silicon Valley's cybersecurity sector. The reporters were practically salivating. One had already published a breaking news tweet that was going viral. Cleaning lady revealed as secret tech millionaire CEO during hostile takeover attempt. James finally found his voice again. All those times you said you were at night school, learning business basics. I was meeting with investors and development teams. I smiled apologetically. I'm sorry for the deception, but I needed to keep this quiet until everything was in place. Linda, who had recovered enough to speak, tried one last time to regain control. The board won't approve this, she said weakly. They know better than to trust some what, mother? James cut in, standing up. Some woman who built a successful company from scratch. Some person who loved your son enough to help him succeed while staying in the background. Some CEO who just offered us a deal that will make Chen Technologies a major player in cybersecurity. The board members were already nodding enthusiastically, looking at the projected profit margins with growing excitement. The deal wasn't just good, it was transformative. I moved to approve the merger, one board member said quickly. Others seconded immediately. As the votes were counted, unanimously in favor, I watched the last of Linda's power crumble. She'd spent years building her influence in the company, positioning herself as the mother of the CEO, the wise advisor, the power behind the throne. Now she was just the woman who had spent 3 years mocking her daughter-in-law for being a cleaner. The meeting concluded with the signing of preliminary merger documents. As people filed out, buzzing with excitement about the company's future, James pulled me aside into his office. 3 years, he said softly. 3 years of watching my mother belittle you, of seeing you clean floors and empty trash cans. Why did you put yourself through that? I took his hand because I believed in you, in us. I wanted to help you succeed without making you feel less. I've seen too many relationships destroyed by money and power imbalances. He pulled me close. You know what amazes me most? Not that you're secretly wealthy or that you've been running the company from the shadows. It's that you were willing to clean toilets just to stay close to me and help the company succeed. Well, I smiled. It did give me an excellent view of how the company really operated. Your middle managers really should learn to watch what they say around the cleaning staff. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of changes. The merger announcement sent our stock price soaring. Business magazines clamored for interviews, fascinated by the story of the undercover CEO. I agreed to a few carefully chosen ones that focused on the business strategy rather than the family drama. Linda took an extended vacation to recover from the shock. Before she left, I visited her at home. She sat stiffly in her living room, looking smaller somehow, diminished. I don't expect us to be friends, I told her honestly, but I love your son, and this company has been his dream since before I met him. I'd like to find a way forward that doesn't involve constant warfare. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. You could have destroyed me today, exposed all my plans, my offshore accounts. Why didn't you? Because you're James's mother, I said simply, and because sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding. She nodded slowly, and while we didn't hug or suddenly become best friends, something shifted. A foundation for a different kind of relationship built on respect, if not affection. James and I moved forward too. He insisted on taking me to dinner at the coffee shop where we first met. As we sat in the same booth where I'd first fallen for his passionate talk about his struggling startup, he took my hand. You know what this means, right? He said with a grin. No more pretending. No more cleaning uniforms. I squeezed his hand. Actually, I think I'll keep doing the cleaning supervisor rounds once a week. You'd be amazed what people tell the cleaning lady. It's better than any management consultant's report. We laughed together, and I felt the last weight lift from my shoulders. The truth was finally out, and our future was brighter than ever. Today, 6 months later, Chen Technologies Zhang Security is the fastest growing cybersecurity firm in Silicon Valley. James and I run it together, true partners at last. Linda has returned from her vacation with a slightly different attitude. She still isn't warm, but she's respectful, especially after our stock price tripled post-merger. And me? I keep a cleaning uniform hanging in my CEO office. It reminds me that success isn't about titles or corner offices. It's about being willing to do whatever it takes to protect what you love, even if that means pushing a mop while running a company. Sometimes at night, I walk through our empty offices, remembering all the conversations I overheard, all the plans I made while everyone thought I was just emptying trash bins. And I smile, knowing that sometimes the best disguise isn't wealth or power, it's being underestimated. After all, they say it's lonely at the top. But from what I've seen, the view is much better from the bottom, looking up at people who never bother to look down. Because that's where you learn the truth about who people really are and what they're really capable of. And as for James, he still occasionally teases me about my night school classes, but now when he introduces me at business functions, he always adds with a proud smile, my wife. She really knows how to clean up in business.
I received a frustrating WhatsApp message from my sister. I left your disabled daughter at your home. Panic-stricken, I rushed home, only to find my daughter sobbing uncontrollably, alone, outside the house. This was the breaking point. I couldn't rely on my sister to look after my kids anymore. It was time to show her what family truly meant. My name is Amanda. I'm 43 years old and have a passion for baking. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved experimenting in the kitchen. You'd think I'd be a master by now, right? And, well, not to brag, but I am, mostly. Except for chiffon cakes. My kids love to tease me about those. Mom, your chiffon cake's so dry. Don't worry, we'll help you next time. But when it comes to muffins, I'm a star. My kids' friends often gush, we wish you were our mom. My own kids just give me smug looks, as if to say, yep, that's our mom. These little moments of banter and joy make family life so special, or so I thought. But my sister Kathy's idea of family was vastly different. This story begins a few years ago, during spring vacation, when my family visited my parents' home. We were casually watching TV when Kathy blurted out, lately, There are so many kids with developmental disabilities. I wonder why. Her comment was as out of place as it was jarring. The TV wasn't even discussing disabilities. Everyone, including my mom and husband, turned to her, puzzled. "What's with the sudden comment?" I asked. "A colleague's child was recently diagnosed with a developmental disability," she replied. "Apparently, kids who are restless or struggle academically might fall into that category. I don't know much about it, but honestly, I think Sarah might have one too." I was stunned. Sarah is Kathy's daughter, my niece. She'd always seemed like a perfectly normal child to me. "Why would you think that?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Well, compared to Ken, she's not as smart. Her language skills are underdeveloped. It's like she has a poor memory or something," Kathy insisted. Mom, my husband, and I exchanged uneasy glances. None of us were experts on developmental disabilities, but nothing about Sarah had ever struck us as unusual. Kathy, however, seemed fixated. "You just don't get it, Amanda," she said, frustrated. "I've been researching developmental disabilities. I know what I'm talking about." At the time, we brushed it off, assuming Kathy would consult a doctor if she was truly concerned, but by the time summer rolled around, her tone had shifted alarmingly. "I knew it. Sarah does have a developmental disability," Kathy declared during another family gathering. Her voice carried an unsettling note of triumph, as though she'd just solved a mystery. "Did you take her to a doctor?" Mom asked, concerned. "No, I didn't need to. I have proof," Kathy said smugly. "Proof?" Mom frowned. "Stop talking like she's some kind of criminal." But Kathy pressed on. "Sarah starts elementary school next year, and she still can't write the alphabet. She's in kindergarten, that's perfectly normal," I said. "Even my daughter, who's already in school, struggles with some letters." "Well, that's because your daughter takes after you," Kathy shot back, a smug smile on her face. Her husband Tim chimed in. "Maybe your daughter has a developmental disability too. Like mother, like daughter." Anger flared in me, but I held it back. "Kids develop at their own pace. There's no need to rush," I said firmly. But Kathy wouldn't hear it. "Ken could write the alphabet ages ago," she insisted, comparing Sarah to her older brother, who'd always been exceptionally bright. "Ken is 3 years older," I pointed out. "It's unfair to compare them." Tim scoffed. "Well, from a medical perspective, Sarah clearly has a developmental disability." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "Medical perspective? Tim, you're not a doctor." It was clear Kathy and Tim had convinced themselves that Sarah was deficient simply because she wasn't meeting the impossibly high standards they'd set for Ken. It wasn't just frustrating, it was heartbreaking. "I always say my siblings graduated from a national university, so I'm smart." Tim's words still echoed in my mind. As ridiculous as they were, he often boasted about his intelligence, using his siblings' accomplishments as if they were his own. For the record, Tim himself graduated from a private university, and not even by choice. He had failed the National University entrance exam after ignoring his teacher's advice not to take it. Now, he manages a supermarket, yet insists he's just as brilliant as his siblings. If you're thinking, "What is he even talking about?" you're not alone. I later learned that Tim was something of an outcast within his own family, which perhaps explained his need to constantly prove himself. But his behavior didn't just stop at self-aggrandizement, it extended into how he and Kathy treated their daughter, Sarah. One day, my husband Mike cautiously suggested, maybe a professional should evaluate Sarah. It could help clear things up. "Oh, I've already consulted professionals," Kathy replied quickly. For a moment, silence fell, and a collective question mark seemed to hang in the air. "What do you mean by professionals?" Mike asked. "Well, I've watched health programs on TV," Kathy said matter-of-factly. "Their observations matched Sarah's symptoms exactly, so it must be accurate." We all sighed in exasperation. Tim chimed in, backing Kathy up. "Yes, those specials are very informative. A colleague of mine saw one, took their child to the doctor, and the diagnosis matched perfectly. It's serious stuff." Mom finally had enough. "TV is just TV. Stop using it as your source for medical advice. If you're truly worried, take Sarah to a real doctor." "Stay out of our parenting," Kathy snapped, her voice sharp. "You're all so ignorant." And with that, she stormed out, dragging Tim and Ken with her, but leaving Sarah behind without a word. Mom sighed deeply. If they're going to act so high and mighty, the least they could do is take proper care of Sarah. Sarah, meanwhile, was playing with my daughter, her usual bright smile plastered on her face, but as I watched her, I noticed something. Every so often, her smile faltered, replaced by a fleeting look of sadness. She must have realized her family had left without her. That brave smile broke my heart. Sarah shouldn't have to carry the burden of our adult failures. I was more certain than ever that she didn't have a developmental disability, but rather, she was the victim of neglect and favoritism. Later that day, Kathy and Tim returned home in high spirits, shopping bags in hand. Mom's face darkened. "Do you often leave Sarah behind when you go out shopping?" "It's just leaving her at home. What's the problem?" Kathy shrugged. "The problem is, you don't leave Ken behind. Why treat Sarah differently?" "She doesn't listen, so we're teaching her discipline," Kathy argued. "Discipline her if you must, but don't just abandon her without explanation. That's cruel," Mom countered. Tim jumped in defensively. "We provide her with proper meals and a good education. Why do you keep criticizing us?" "That's the bare minimum for parenting," I said sharply. "You act like it's some grand favor. This is a family matter. Stay out of it." "Amanda," Tim snapped. "Sarah is my family too," I shot back. "She's my niece. If she's being mistreated, I won't stay silent." My words seemed to hit a nerve. Kathy and Tim avoided my gaze, but their silence spoke volumes. "If you suspect Sarah has a developmental disability, leaving her alone is even more irresponsible," Mike added. "That's why we're teaching her to stay home alone." Kathy slammed her hand on the table. The argument dragged on for hours, going nowhere. Eventually, Kathy and Tim left early the next morning, cutting their visit short. Their favoritism towards Ken was painfully obvious throughout their stay. At meals, if Ken's favorite shrimp was served, Kathy and Tim would give him extra portions, even taking from Sarah's plate. Sarah, clearly used to this treatment, never protested. Instead, she simply complied, a resigned look on her face. The same pattern repeated itself in other ways. Promises of new toys and games were made to Ken, while Sarah was ignored. All family conversations revolved around Ken's achievements, leaving Sarah to sit quietly on the sidelines. It was heartbreaking to witness. One day, Kathy showed up unannounced with Sarah. "Can you take care of her just for today?" she asked. Even Sarah seemed confused by the sudden request. She glanced at me and said softly, "I could just play in the park instead." Without asking too many questions, we agreed to look after her. When Kathy returned later that evening, she seemed apologetic. "Thanks for watching, Sarah," she said. "Why the short notice?" I asked. "Oh, Ken had friends over. Their moms are all doctors and lawyers. You know, it'd be awkward to have Sarah around." I was stunned. "You're ashamed of your own daughter? She doesn't fit in with those families." "What can I do?" Kathy said with a laugh, as if it were a joke. "That's no excuse," I said firmly. "Whether Sarah has a disability or not, she's your daughter. You should be her biggest supporter, not her biggest critic." Kathy's smile vanished. "You've only raised one child. Don't lecture me." With that, she yanked Sarah by the arm and left. These patterns continued. Kathy and Tim would leave Sarah with us, often for long periods, while they took Ken on elaborate outings. They showed up late to pick her up, offered no apologies, and acted like nothing was wrong. Their actions only reinforced my determination to step in. Sarah deserved better than the hand she'd been dealt, and I was going to do everything in my power to ensure she got it. "I told you to call before coming over, didn't I? And why didn't you stick to the agreed time?" My tone was sharper than usual, even in front of Sarah. I couldn't help it, I was furious. "Oh, don't be so picky," Kathy replied nonchalantly. "We're here to pick her up, aren't we?" "That's a given," I snapped. "But you can't just drop her off carelessly without proper planning." "What's with you lately? Always so irritated, is it menopause?" Kathy quipped with a smirk. Tim burst into loud laughter, finding her remark hilarious. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep calm. "You two are unbelievable. I keep repeating myself, you need to rethink how you're raising your kids." "We are thinking about it," Kathy shot back. "That's why Ken is involved in so many activities. Unlike your daughter, who doesn't do anything. We respect our daughter's wishes, because she said she didn't want to participate in those things. Well, we're respecting Ken's wishes, too. Isn't that right, Ken?" Kathy turned to him. Ken nodded weakly, his forced smile betraying his true feelings. "See?" Kathy said triumphantly. "Even Ken agrees." I sighed deeply. I'm tired of repeating myself. "Fine, just take Sarah and go." Kathy grabbed Sarah by the arm, practically dragging her toward the car. Tim didn't say a word as he started the engine, leaving us standing there, feeling defeated once again. The next day, I was out shopping when I received a text from Kathy. "Hey Amanda, you love Sarah, right?" Confused, I replied, "Of course I do. She's my niece. Why are you asking this?" Her response left me stunned. Great. Perfect. Consider her your daughter now. I left her at your doorstep. I didn't see anyone home, so you should hurry back. She might be crying alone. I froze in the middle of the store, rereading her message in disbelief. Was this some kind of joke? I called her immediately, but her phone was off. Panic set in. I abandoned my cart and rushed home. When I arrived, my heart sank. Sarah was sitting on the ground in front of the door, crying uncontrollably. Her face was buried in her hands, her small body shaking with sobs. Sarah, I ran to her and pulled her into a hug. She clung to me tightly, tears soaking my shoulder. It's okay, sweetheart, I'm here. It was clear what had happened. Even without asking, Kathy had abandoned her. Calls to Kathy and Tim's phones went unanswered. They had deliberately cut off contact. Through her tears, Sarah whispered, "Auntie, I didn't want to be left like that." I held her close, my anger toward Kathy and Tim boiling over. How could they be so cruel? Right then and there, I made a promise to Sarah, and to myself, I would protect her. She didn't deserve this. Within a week, my husband, mother-in-law, and I went to Kathy's house to confront them. We brought along legal paperwork to formalize Sarah's adoption. Our plan was clear: Sarah would become our daughter. To our surprise, Kathy and Tim agreed without much resistance. Less burden for us, Kathy said with a dismissive shrug as she signed the papers. Her lack of remorse infuriated me, but I held my tongue. Sarah's well-being was my only priority. 3 months later, Kathy showed up at our house unexpectedly. "We want Sarah back," she said, as if the past few months had never happened. "What are you talking about?" I asked, incredulous. "She's a genius," Kathy exclaimed. "I just found out she won an art contest. Her painting was displayed at the bank. We didn't even know she liked to draw." I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. "Of course you didn't know, because you never paid attention to her. That contest? I submitted her artwork myself. Her preschool has been encouraging you to nurture her talents for years, but you ignored them." Kathy's face flushed with embarrassment. "Well, it doesn't matter now, just give her back." I shook my head. "It's not that simple. The adoption is finalized. Sarah is our daughter now, but if she wants to go back to you, I won't stop her. She'll choose me," Kathy said smugly. "Watch." I called Sarah into the room. When she saw Kathy, she hesitated, then clung to me. "Mama," she said softly, a name she'd started using to combine mom and auntie. Kathy reached for her, but Ken stepped in front of his mother protectively. "Ken, what are you doing here? Don't you have lessons?" Kathy demanded. Ken's voice trembled as he replied, "I don't want to go to lessons anymore. I hate them. I hate everything you make me do." Kathy tried to scold him, but I stopped her. "Don't you get it? Your children don't want what you're forcing on them. You've been so focused on appearances and achievements that you've completely ignored their happiness." Kathy stood there, speechless. "Just go home," I said firmly. "You've lost the right to call yourself their mother." In the years that followed, our family dynamic flourished. Sarah, Ken, and our daughter grew close, forming a bond stronger than I could have imagined. Ken moved in with my mother, and Sarah thrived in our home, pursuing her passion for art. Though the road was challenging, it was worth every step. Our two-family household was filled with love, laughter, and the joy of watching the kids grow into their unique talents. Kathy and Tim, meanwhile, drifted into isolation, burdened by the consequences of their selfishness. Our lives weren't perfect, but they were rich with the one thing that mattered most: family.
The day I was fired from Novatech wasn't the worst day of my life. That had come 6 months earlier when Mom's cancer returned. But standing in Marcus Sterling's corner office, watching him sneer at my request for flexible hours to handle her treatments, I realized just how cruel success could make people. "Let me get this straight, David." Marcus leaned back in his Italian leather chair, his custom suit probably worth more than my yearly salary. "You want special treatment because your mother is sick. Do you think Novatech became a billion-dollar company by accommodating everyone's personal problems?" I stood my ground, 5 years of leading his R&D department giving me the courage to speak up. I've delivered every project ahead of schedule. I can work remotely when needed. My team supports. Your team? He cut me off with a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Let's be clear. They're my team. Everything here is mine. That's what happens when you're the CEO. The Manhattan skyline stretched out behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows, a perfect backdrop for his power play. On his desk, business magazines featured his face under headlines like Tech's youngest billionaire and the new king of Silicon Valley. I just need 3 months. I tried again. The doctors say this round of treatment is crucial, and I need employees who put this company first. Marcus stood, straightening his tie. Your mother's health issues are not Novatech's concern. If you can't maintain normal working hours, I'll find someone who can. The threat hung in the air between us. I thought about Mom, how she'd raised me alone after Dad died, working 2 jobs to put me through engineering school. How she'd never missed a science fair or graduation, even when she was exhausted. How she'd beamed with pride when I landed this job at Novatech. Then I guess you'll have to find someone else, I said quietly. Marcus's smile was sharp as a knife. Security will escort you out. Your personal items will be shipped to you. He turned to his computer, already dismissing me. Oh, and David, don't expect a reference. As security walked me through the open office, past shocked colleagues and whispered conversations, I caught a glimpse of the presentation slides on the main screen. Project Quantum, $2.3 billion merger with TechCorp Industries. Little did Marcus know, but that merger was about to become his biggest nightmare. Because while he'd been busy building his empire on the backs of overworked employees, I'd been quietly building something of my own. The idea had come during those long nights at the hospital during Mom's first bout with cancer. Watching the medical equipment struggle to communicate across different systems, seeing nurses waste precious time dealing with compatibility issues, I knew there had to be a better way. For 2 years, I'd worked on it in my spare time, a revolutionary quantum computing protocol that could seamlessly integrate any technological system, regardless of manufacturer or operating system. The ultimate universal translator for the digital age. Novatech's contracts included the standard clause claiming ownership of any innovation developed using company resources. But I hadn't used a single company resource. Every line of code had been written on my personal laptop, every test run through servers I built in my garage. And 3 months ago, just after Mom's cancer returned, I quietly filed the patents under my own name. The same patents that Novatech's merger with TechCorp desperately needed to succeed. Walking out of the Novatech building for the last time, I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to Dr. Sarah Chen, Mom's oncologist, upgrading her care package to the hospital's premium suite. The second was to my old college roommate, now a partner at Silicon Valley's top tech law firm. Hey, Michael, I said, watching Marcus's office through the glass walls as he probably drafted the company-wide email about my departure. Remember that patent portfolio we filed? I think it's time to take it public. The next morning, as I sat with Mom during her treatment, my phone buzzed with breaking news alerts. Mysterious PTNT FILING 3 teens NLVATCHCORPMEOGR. Wall Street QESTIONS VIABILITW of $2.3 billion test-stage deal. NOVATCHSTOCK on integration concerns. Mom looked up from her magazine, ever perceptive despite her illness. Something interesting on your phone, honey? I smiled, taking her hand. Just some business news, nothing as important as being here with you. But we both knew this was just the beginning. Marcus Sterling was about to learn a valuable lesson about what really matters in life. And it wasn't his corner office or magazine covers. Sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the catalyst for something extraordinary. And sometimes, when you choose love over power, you end up with both. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits, patent meetings, and increasingly frantic news updates about Novatech's crumbling merger plans. From my mom's premium hospital suite, I watched Marcus Sterling's empire start to crack. TechCorp demands answers on integration protocol. Novatech faces shareholder revolt over merger concerns. Sterling's $2.3 billion dream deal on life support. You don't look very upset for someone who just lost their job, Mom observed one morning, her keen eyes studying me over her breakfast tray. Despite the aggressive treatments, she hadn't lost her sharp insight. Actually, I smiled, setting my laptop aside. I think I finally found my real job. My phone buzzed. Michael, my patent attorney, calling with updates. David, it's chaos over there, he reported gleefully. Sterling's been in emergency board meetings for 3 days straight. TechCorp is threatening to pull out unless Novatech can guarantee system integration within 6 months. Which they can't do without my protocol. I finished. Exactly. Their in-house team says it would take years to develop something comparable. The board is demanding answers, shareholders are panicking, and Sterling, well, let's just say his tech's youngest billionaire crown is slipping. I glanced at Mom, dozing now after her morning medications. Have they figured out who owns the patents yet? No, but they're getting close. Sterling's lawyers have been crawling all over the patent office filings. It's only a matter of time. As if on cue, my phone lit up with another call. Nina Chen, my former deputy at Novatech's R&D department. David, she whispered urgently, Sterling's on the warpath. He just fired 3 people for disloyalty because they suggested looking for the patent holder instead of trying to build a new protocol from scratch. How's the team? Scared. Overworked. He's got everyone pulling 16-hour days trying to replicate your work. But David? She hesitated. There's something else. I overheard him on the phone with someone about alternative acquisition methods. He sounded desperate. I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Marcus Sterling hadn't built his empire by playing nice. When billions were at stake, people like him often decided that rules were for others. Sure enough, that evening, unusual activity alerts started pinging from my home security system. Someone had tried to access my garage where my development servers were kept. They're getting sloppy, Michael commented when I called him. I've documented everything. But David, you need to be careful. Sterling's not going to take this lying down. He was right. The next morning, a routine audit from the IRS arrived at my door. By afternoon, old college acquaintances were receiving calls about my concerning behavior. A reporter even showed up at Mom's hospital room, asking questions about my troubled childhood. Classic intimidation tactics, Michael assured me. They're trying to pressure you into revealing yourself. The good news is it means they're desperate. The bad news arrived 3 days later. Mom's doctor called me into her office, looking troubled. There's been a complication with the insurance, Dr. Chen said carefully. Somehow, all your mother's premium care authorizations have been revoked. They're saying she needs to move to standard care immediately. My hands clenched. Sterling. I'm sorry. Nothing. I stood up. Don't change anything about her care. I'll handle the bills directly. But Marcus Sterling's message was clear. He could hurt me through the people I loved. Walking back to Mom's room, I made a decision. It was time to stop playing defense. I called Michael. Remember that press package we prepared? Release it tomorrow morning. All of it. The full reveal. Are you sure? Once we do this, I'm sure. And Michael? Make sure every major business news outlet gets the video of Sterling firing me. The security cameras had excellent audio. The next morning, while Mom and I watched the sunrise from her hospital window, my phone exploded with notifications. Fired NOVATC gauge engineer REVELED as NULISTEROI KKENT HOLODIER. Steer at lines FATAL mistake. Full video of confrontation GOES EIVRAL. No VTCH board KL's emergency meeting as SHR IS plunge 40%. Mom picked up her tablet, reading the headlines. Is this why you've been smiling at your phone all week? I took her hand. Part of it. The other part is your latest scan results. The treatment's working, Mom. Tears filled her eyes. You didn't have to give up your job for me. I didn't give up anything. I just finally understood what you always taught me. Real success isn't about corner offices or magazine covers. It's about doing the right thing, even when it's hard. My phone buzzed again. A message from Nina. Sterling's called an all-hands emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's ordered every department head to attend, including former employees. David, I think this is it. I squeezed Mom's hand. Get some rest. I have a meeting tomorrow. Give them hell, honey, she smiled. But remember, revenge isn't about destroying others. It's about building something better. I finished our old saying. I know, Mom, and that's exactly what I plan to do. Novatech's lobby looked exactly as I remembered it. All chrome and glass and carefully cultivated power. But this morning, the usual buzz of activity was replaced by tense silence. Every screen displayed the same news. Novatech's stock in freefall. The merger collapsing, and my face. The fired engineer who held their future in his hands. Security recognized me immediately. Mr. Wilson, the guard nodded respectfully, all traces of his previous dismissive attitude gone. The board is waiting in the main conference room. I checked my watch, 8:57 a.m. Right on time. The conference room fell silent as I entered. Familiar faces lined both sides of the massive table. Department heads, board members, and major investors. Marcus Sterling sat at the head, his perfect facade cracking around the edges. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his designer suit slightly rumpled. "David," he forced a smile. "Thank you for coming. I believe we have some things to discuss." "Do we?" I took my seat, setting my laptop on the table. I thought Novatech wasn't concerned with personal problems. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. The video of my firing had gone viral, with Sterling's callous dismissal of my sick mother becoming a symbol of toxic corporate culture. "The past is the past." Sterling waved his hand dismissively. "We're here to talk business. Your integration protocol. Obviously, there's been a misunderstanding about ownership." "No misunderstanding." I opened my laptop. "The patents are registered to me personally. Every line of code was written on my own time, using my own resources. Your lawyers have already confirmed this." "Then name your price." Sterling leaned forward. "Everyone has one." I pulled up a document on the main screen. "Actually, I have terms." "Terms?" Sterling's fake smile faltered. "First, Novatech will establish a comprehensive healthcare fund for all employees and their families. Full coverage, no exceptions." "That's not." "Second," I continued, "the company will implement strict work-life balance policies. No more 80-hour weeks or vacation shaming." "This is ridiculous." Sterling stood up. "We're offering you millions and you want to play social justice warrior?" "Third," I met his glare steadily, "you resign as CEO effective immediately." The room erupted in chaos. Sterling's face turned purple. "How dare you?" "How dare I?" I stood up slowly. "You tried to intimidate me. You targeted my mother's medical care. You even sent people to break into my home." "You can't prove." "Actually," I tapped my laptop, bringing up another screen. "I can prove everything, including your insider trading last quarter, your offshore accounts, and those interesting emails about alternative acquisition methods." The board chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Sterling, perhaps we should discuss these allegations privately." "This is absurd." Sterling slammed his fist on the table. "I built this company." "No," I corrected quietly. "You built an empire on other people's work and sacrifice. The real Novatech was built by engineers working overtime, by developers missing their kids' birthdays, by people like me who believed in creating something meaningful." I turned to address the board directly. "My integration protocol is revolutionary. With it, Novatech could dominate the tech industry for decades. Without it, the company will lose the merger and likely face a shareholder revolt." The chairman nodded gravely. "Your terms, Mr. Wilson, are non-negotiable." I finished. "But there's one more thing." I pulled up a final document, a press release announcing Novatech's new charitable initiative. The Grace Wilson Memorial Foundation, named for my mother, dedicated to supporting families facing medical crises. "You're insane," Sterling whispered. "The shareholders will never." Actually, a new voice spoke up. James Chen, our biggest investor, stood. "The shareholders have already voted. Mr. Sterling, the board has lost confidence in your leadership. We accept Mr. Wilson's terms." What happened next was a blur of signatures and legal documents. By noon, Marcus Sterling had been escorted from the building, his empire crumbling around him. By evening, Novatech's stock had stabilized as the markets responded to the announced changes. 1 week later, I stood in Mom's hospital room, watching her rig the news coverage. "Novatech announces revolutionary new direction," she read aloud. "Former R&D head David Wilson named CEO. My son, the chief executive." "Acting CEO," I corrected. "Just until we implement the changes. Then I'm going back to R&D. That's where the real work happens." She smiled knowingly. "And the foundation?" "Already helping 3 families cover their cancer treatments." I took her hand. "Soon it'll be helping hundreds. Your father would be so proud." She squeezed my fingers. "Not of the success, though that's wonderful, but of how you achieved it. You didn't let bitterness win." "I learned from the best." I smiled. How are you feeling? Better every day. The doctors are very optimistic. My phone buzzed. A message from Nina about the merger negotiations. TechCorp was thrilled with the new direction. The deal would go through, bigger than ever. You know, Mom mused, Marcus Sterling never understood the most important thing about success. What's that? Real power isn't about controlling others. It's about lifting them up. That's how you build something lasting. Looking out at the sunset painting the city skyline, I thought about everything that had changed. Nova Tech was transforming from a burnout factory into a model of corporate responsibility. Families like mine wouldn't have to choose between work and caring for their loved ones. And somewhere, Marcus Sterling was learning that true leadership isn't about corner offices and magazine covers. By the way, Mom added casually, when do you plan to tell them about your new quantum encryption protocol? I grinned. Some things never changed. Mom still knew me better than anyone. One revolution at a time, I replied. For now, let's focus on getting you better. After all, I squeezed her hand. Family comes first. Years later, people would study the Nova Tech transformation as a business school case. They'd analyze the strategy, the timing, the execution. But they'd miss the most important lesson. Sometimes the greatest victories don't come from destroying your enemies, but from transforming their weapons into tools for healing. And sometimes, when you choose love over power, you end up changing not just a company, but an entire industry. As for me, I still work late sometimes, but now it's by choice, usually brainstorming new ways to make the world a little better, one innovation at a time. After all, that's what real success looks like.
My husband, Brian, whom I supported through thick and thin, was promoted to department head, but then he was taken away by my best friend. He discarded me and the child we had raised together, betraying me as completely as my once trusted friend. It was the lowest point of my life, but thanks to my daughter, who was now an adult starting her career, I managed to recover and move forward. 2 years later, I ran into them unexpectedly in the city. My former best friend sneered as she glanced at the man standing beside me. A poor-looking old man suits you well, she said smugly. I smiled calmly. Good to see you. Don't you recognize me? She looked confused. My ex-husband rushed over. Panicking, I turned to them both and said, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Sarah. Until 2 years ago, I was Sarah Ingram. 2 years ago, my husband Matt, the man I married at 24 after a whirlwind romance, asked me for a divorce. It happened just after he was promoted to department head. I had met Matt when I was a new hire, fresh out of college, and he was my senior colleague and mentor. Not long into our relationship, I discovered I was pregnant. Without hesitation, we decided to marry, and I left my job to focus on our child, Emma, who is now 22 and thriving in her career. I had thought I could finally enjoy the second half of my life with Matt. With Emma grown and independent, we'd have more time for each other. But that hope was shattered on the day Matt came home wearing a distant expression. I had prepared a special dinner to celebrate his promotion. When he sat down, he avoided my eyes. We need to talk, he said gravely. My heart sank, but I tried to stay optimistic. Maybe he wanted to talk about our future now that his career was stable. I had imagined he might thank me for my years of support or even surprise me with plans for a vacation. Instead, his words cut through me like a knife. I want a divorce. I've fallen in love with someone else. I was stunned. 4 years, I had supported him, raising Emma largely on my own while he chased his ambitions. I believed him every time he said he was busy with work dinners or business golf. I hadn't seen any signs of his betrayal. My life revolved around our family, and I thought I could rely on his gratitude and loyalty. But instead, Matt left me for my best friend. They both betrayed the trust one had placed in them. Alone and heartbroken, I struggled to rebuild my life. It was Emma who kept me going, her strength and determination inspiring me to move forward. Now, 2 years later, as I stood face to face with them in the city, I felt nothing but calm. The man next to me, a kind and supportive partner, smiled as I introduced myself anew. My ex-husband and former friend looked shaken, but I was unbothered. I had already reclaimed my life. I chose not to complain and supported Matt from behind the scenes. I had witnessed firsthand the challenges he faced after our unexpected pregnancy and my decision to resign from work. One of Matt's superiors once said, "He's a rookie with a slow work pace, but he sure knows how to get a woman pregnant fast." That stung both of us deeply. Matt faced constant criticism, and not all of our colleagues supported our decision to get married. Despite this, he endured the judgment and worked tirelessly to prove himself. His dedication eventually paid off with an early promotion to department head. I wanted to ensure his success reflected well on both of us. I went out of my way to choose thoughtful gifts for his bosses and their families, even when it took extra effort. At company events, I smiled politely, aware I was being judged for leaving work early or stepping away from my career. I didn't mind. I did all of it because I believed in him and wanted to see him succeed. But rather than thank me for my unwavering support, Matt delivered the ultimate betrayal. Until the day he asked for a divorce, I hadn't suspected for a moment that Matt was having an affair. Was I foolish? Had I been blind to the signs? I had to know the truth, no matter how painful. Who is she? I asked, my voice trembling. Perhaps it was just an infatuation, and he wasn't serious about ending our family. Matt hesitated before responding. You know her. She's someone close to you. My mind raced as I tried to piece it together. Was it a former coworker? One of Emma's friends? That idea felt too absurd, too inappropriate. It would make Matt look creepy. Could it be one of the families we knew through Emma's activities, like swimming or ballet? But Matt rarely participated in those events. He didn't even drive Emma to her lessons. Just tell me, I said, my patience wearing thin. He sighed and shouted, it's Michelle. Michelle? The name struck me like a blow. Michelle had been my best friend since childhood, the person I trusted most. We'd shared everything, our joys, our struggles, and even our families. When Matt and I got engaged, Michelle had asked me to introduce her to one of Matt's friends. She later married him, and they had a daughter, Jessica, who was 3 years younger than Emma. 4 years. We bonded over parenting, organizing barbecues, and sharing advice. I had never imagined she would betray me like this. Memories of Michelle flooded my mind. Once, when I was holding on to some of Emma's outgrown clothes, Michelle had joked, holding on to these things like this? That's the sign of a toxic parent. It's just stuff. Sarah, you need to let go, or you'll be that kind of mom. Her words had stung, but I took them to heart and tried to be less sentimental. Later, I gave Michelle some of Emma's old clothes and toys as hand-me-downs. However, I struggled to part with one item, Emma's preschool uniform. It held too many memories of her first year of school. I lied to Michelle, saying I might need it for another child, and asked her to return it once Jessica was done with it. Michelle's marriage didn't last, and by the time Jessica was in kindergarten, she and her husband divorced. When she handed me back the preschool uniform, I was relieved to have it again, even though it was worn and patched. But her words stung as she handed it over. Must be nice to be a housewife. Huh, Sarah? I'm still dating, but as a single parent, I can't give Jessica a sibling. At the time, Michelle hadn't shared the details of her marital problems. I empathized with her struggles, but I was also dealing with my own disappointments. I had wanted a second child, but Matt's long hours and lack of interest left no room for that discussion. I let go of that dream, feeling grateful that I was better off than Michelle in some ways. But now, hearing Matt utter her name, the betrayal felt unbearable. Michelle, who once accused me of still dating my own husband, had stolen him from me. The guy you introduced me to left me for another woman, Sarah, she had once said bitterly. I hadn't denied it then, only smiled sympathetically. I never imagined she would turn around and do the same thing to me. Michelle picked a fight with me not long after her divorce. It all started because she'd asked me to introduce her to someone I barely knew, her now ex-husband. When I first met him, Michelle was immediately drawn to his looks and made it her mission to pursue him. I had advised her to take things slow and really get to know him, but she didn't listen. Later, when her marriage fell apart, she blamed me. I was confused but sympathetic, recognizing she needed a friend to lean on during a tough time. I didn't hold it against her. After her divorce, I tried to support Michelle and her daughter, Jessica, however I could. I even registered as Jessica's emergency contact at her daycare. If Jessica got sick and Michelle couldn't leave work, I'd pick her up, take her to the doctor, and look after her until Michelle was free. I adjusted my part-time work schedule to be there for Jessica when she started middle school, as she spent afternoons at my house instead of daycare. It wasn't easy, but I wanted to help. When my own daughter, Emma, graduated from elementary school and moved on to middle school, my life took a turn. A clerk at my part-time job got married and relocated, and my company offered me a full-time position. Matt, my husband, supported the idea of increasing our household income, and Emma was on board too. After years of focusing on family, I was excited to take on this new chapter. However, working full-time meant I couldn't continue looking after Jessica after school. Michelle and I had to adjust. Jessica began coming home to an empty house, but I figured it wasn't my responsibility anymore. Life moved on. Over the next 9 years, Michelle and I saw less of each other. Although we didn't meet as often as we had when our daughters were young, I still considered her my best friend. Then, one day, Matt's unexpected words shattered that illusion. "I want a divorce. I'm in love with Michelle." His declaration hit me like a ton of bricks. I tried to laugh it off, thinking it had to be some kind of joke. "You're kidding, right? Michelle is my best friend." But Matt's expression was deadly serious. "I know she's your best friend, but I've fallen for her. I can't help how I feel." I stared at him, stunned. How could a 49-year-old man with a 22-year-old daughter speak so childishly? It felt like I was trapped in some absurd soap opera. "So it's just your crush, right? Michelle would never betray me." Desperate for clarity, I called Michelle. She picked up immediately. "Michelle, can you come over? Matt's saying some crazy things." But instead of laughing it off, Michelle chuckled. "Oh, I already know. Matt told me he was asking you for a divorce today." "You knew?" My heart sank. "You'd been talking to him?" Her voice was cheerful, almost gleeful. "Yes, Sarah, I'm sorry, but Matt's in love with me now. He wants to divorce you and marry me." The world seemed to spin. This had to be a cruel joke. My husband and my best friend conspiring together? It was too much to believe. Matt left the room muttering something about going out for a smoke, something he hadn't done since I was pregnant. When had he started again? When he returned, he wasn't alone. Michelle walked in beside him, and they both looked resolute. "Sarah, I'm really sorry," Matt began, "but we've confirmed our feelings for each other. Michelle is the right partner for me now." Despite her words of apology, Michelle's smirk was unmistakable. I couldn't help but snap. "Didn't you already have a boyfriend, Michelle? You always did, even after your divorce. And some of them supported you financially." Her expression hardened. "Sarah, don't bring that up in front of Matt. Those boyfriends were just temporary. The truth is, I've always loved Matt." She even mustered fake tears, putting on a melodramatic display. To my shock, Matt reached out and stroked her hair tenderly. "Sarah, don't blame Michelle," he said softly, as if this betrayal was something I simply needed to accept. It was like Matt wanted to cast himself as some tragic hero in this ridiculous drama. Watching him and Michelle, I could hardly believe these people were real. My heart shattered as tears rolled silently down my cheeks. I whispered, "Since when?" "We've been meeting in secret for a long time," Michelle admitted shamelessly, "but we only started talking seriously about marriage after Matt's promotion was confirmed." I felt like a fool. I had trusted them both, and now it was clear they had been betraying me behind my back. Michelle must have seen Matt's promotion as an opportunity to improve her own life and latched onto the idea of marriage. Her arrogance was unbearable. "So now that you know, hurry up and divorce him already," she said, smirking. Her attitude made my tears feel ridiculous. I forced myself to respond, "Fine, I'll divorce him," but I couldn't resist asking, "What about Jessica? Does she know?" "Don't ignore your daughter's feelings." At the mention of Jessica, Matt's face briefly registered guilt. He dropped his gaze. "Jessica turned 18 and moved out. She's no longer my responsibility," he muttered. Then, astonishingly, he added, "It's probably your fault she turned out so defiant, considering how much time she spent with you." Their callousness was staggering. I hadn't spoken to Jessica in some time, so I hadn't even known she had moved out. When Matt produced the divorce papers, with Michelle's signature already on the guarantor section, I couldn't muster the energy to argue. Seeing that grotesque document, I agreed to the divorce on the spot. Matt packed his things and moved out to live with Michelle. I never thought Michelle would have the audacity to treat my husband like one of my daughter's hand-me-down clothes. Yet here we were. When Emma returned from her business trip the next day, I told her everything. Her reaction was sharper than I expected. "That man isn't my father anymore," she said firmly. "And Michelle? She's the worst person I've ever known." Her words startled me, but I saw how strong Emma had become. I had worried she would be deeply hurt, but she handled the news better than I had imagined. Even so, her anger burned hot. "Have you talked to Jessica?" I asked. "I'm worried she might be struggling." "Mom, stop worrying about other people and start thinking about yourself," Emma said, her eyes brimming with tears. Seeing her so raw and vulnerable, I realized she had suffered more than she let on. I hugged her, something we hadn't done in years. I vowed to be a better parent, someone Emma could truly be proud of. 2 years passed without a word from Matt or Michelle. Emma thrived in her new independence, and we saw no reason to reach out to her father. Michelle had moved far away after marrying Matt, and our paths never crossed until one fateful evening. After attending a play, I ran into them in the city by chance. Our eyes met. and I couldn't avoid them. Michelle's mocking voice cut through the air. A poor-looking old man suits you, she sneered, glancing disdainfully at the man beside me. I didn't take the bait. I had just enjoyed a lovely evening with my new boyfriend, Jonathan. He and I had been watching the play together. Instead of responding to her insult, I shot her a level look. Good to see you, Michelle. Don't you recognize him? Michelle's smug expression faltered, and she stared at Jonathan in disbelief. Matt looked equally stunned. Wait, you're Jonathan? Matt stammered. Jonathan had been Matt's senior at the company, mentoring him when he first started. He had once taken the fall for a mistake Matt made, which had cost Jonathan his job. I hadn't known this back then, but we reconnected recently through a mutual acquaintance. That's how we had started dating. Michelle's face twisted as she remembered. I had once introduced Jonathan to her as a potential partner, but she had rejected him, saying he was too old and not stylish enough. Now, Jonathan looked different, his appearance more polished and refined. Michelle's disdain for anything understated had blinded her to his true worth. Jonathan spoke calmly but firmly. Relax, Michelle. It's not a big company, and my income isn't huge, but starting my own business worked out for the best. Michelle's eyes widened in horror. What? He's a CEO? She blurted, her crassness on full display. If I'd known that, I wouldn't have married Matt. He's so cheap. Her outburst only made me pity her more. Jonathan, ever composed, simply shrugged. It's not about titles, Michelle. It's about character. Just then, I noticed Emma and Jessica standing nearby. Having overheard the scene, guilt tugged at me. They shouldn't have had to witness this embarrassment, yet their expressions were resolute. Still relying on men after all these years, Emma said, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. When will you ever learn? Michelle turned, startled, and suddenly adopted a parental tone. Jessica, Emma, how have you been? But their daughters weren't buying it. Jessica, standing tall, spoke with quiet strength. I loved you once, Mom, but after the divorce, you moved us around and dated random men. It made me uncomfortable and ashamed. I used to wish Miss Sarah was my mom. Her words pierced my heart. I hugged her tightly, feeling a bond stronger than ever before. Jonathan's voice broke the tension. Come on, let's leave these foolish people behind and go have a nice meal. We walked away, leaving Matt and Michelle to their hollow lives. Later, I learned from an old classmate that they had divorced. Matt had finally reached his breaking point after Michelle repeatedly belittled him. Emma and Jessica grew closer, like true sisters. Jonathan eventually proposed, and I accepted. Looking back, I realized my first marriage had been a mistake, but it had led me to where I belonged. Together, Jonathan, Emma, Jessica, and I are building a new life, filled with love and laughter.